I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
The race is on to find a new Prime Minister, the third this year.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Friday the 21st of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
Of course, we're live across the whole of the UK on your TV, your radio and online, so wherever you are and whatever you're up to this morning, take us with you.
Here are your top stories this morning. Well, this time next week, Britain will have a new Prime Minister. Liz Truss will go down in history as Britain's shortest-serving PM. Her government collapsed in the wake of its failed mini-budget last month, and Ms Truss was forced to resign yesterday.
The latest net borrowing figures and retail sales figures will be released in the next hour. Stay with us then as we try to make sense of how all this affects your finances.
And we've got the latest results from our exclusive GB News People's Poll. We asked you if you want Boris back. Find out how you voted.
Well, if you want to get involved in any of our discussions this morning, I suggest that mainly it's going to be about politics, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, there are so many different views out there now as to what best to do, how best to take it forward. So let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Well, to our main news today then, and as you will know by now, Liz Truss has resigned as Prime Minister after only 45 days in office, making her the shortest-serving British Prime Minister in history.
The fast-tracked contest to find out the next party leader has already started, and we're likely to see the new Prime Minister, the third in as many months, by the end of next week.
Well, our national reporter Paul Hawkins looks back now at Liz Truss's short time as Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
From this...
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
To this. 24 hours is a long time in politics, or at least Liz Truss's political career. Only 45 days ago, the woman who played the role of PM in her school's mock general election achieving her ultimate ambition. But the job would have to wait. The Queen's death meant Liz Truss started her premiership more as a stateswoman than a politician. But politics never went away, and nor did the cost of living crisis. She announced a major package to help with energy bills.
Nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. We will deliver this by securing the wholesale price for energy while putting in place long-term measures to secure future supplies at more affordable rates.
And then days later came that mini-budget.
Today, we have cut stamp duty, we have allowed businesses to keep more of their own money to invest, to innovate and to grow. We have cut income tax.
With the PM promising
growth, growth and growth.
But the wheels started to fall off.
The pound slumped to a record low against the dollar, plunging towards parity after the government unveiled its plan to cut taxes.
The markets took a dim view of huge, unfunded tax cuts. The pound tanked, but did rebound, and government borrowing costs linked to our mortgage rates continued to rise. Conversely, the economic credibility of the government and the Conservative Party was sliding fast. Labour opened up a huge lead in the polls, and with some pension funds under threat...
The Bank of England has announced it will intervene in markets to avert risk to UK financial stability.
But the bond buying couldn't last.
The Bank of England has confirmed that its emergency bond buying scheme, put in place to stabilise the markets, will close this Friday.
No support for pensions meant the government had to act.
It's being widely reported Kwasi Kwarteng has been sacked as Chancellor.
Sacked in an effort to reassure the markets. His replacement, the man who ran against her to be Conservative Party leader, Jeremy Hunt, ditching almost all her flagship economic policies. The markets responded, with government borrowing costs starting to fall, but so too was her political authority. Everything she said she was going to do, gone. Leading one tabloid to start a race between Liz Truss and a lettuce. Who would last longest?
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
She said in her last PMQs before resigning. But just a few hours later,
Suella Braverman has departed as Home Secretary.
Suella Braverman walking out with shots fired at the PM as she left.
In an openly critical paragraph in her resignation letter, she said about the Prime Minister she had serious concerns about the government's commitment to honouring manifesto commitments, such as reducing overall migration numbers.
There were multiple reports they'd fallen out over migration. The PM wanting more, Braverman wanting less. Alienating her from the right of the party meant losing valuable support for Liz Truss.
Order!
That loss manifesting itself in the behaviour of Conservative MPs on Wednesday evening during a vote of confidence in the government.
I saw members being physically manhandled into another lobby and being bullied.
Backbenchers weren't happy. And on day 45, she threw in the towel.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
In a little over 7 weeks, the UK's shortest-serving PM destroyed the credibility of the world's most successful political party and left the country's economy in an even dire state. The only winner in this sorry saga? That lettuce. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Well, joining us now is the Mayor of Ware, Rishi Fernando, who supported Rishi Sunak during the leadership campaign this summer. Good morning to you, Rishi. So, first of all, let's start with Liz Truss. We just watched that report there. Do you think she was right to go yesterday?
I think the timing was right. It was a matter of when, not if, it became to that situation where, unfortunately, she just couldn't continue. You know, she came in on a growth mandate and the economy and the markets just pushed back and said it now wasn't the time, and I think it was right that she went.
Yeah, but where does that leave the party now then? I mean, it's the party that, you know, that you love, presumably, and it doesn't seem to have any direction and, according to some people, is at the moment ungovernable.
Well, and I think that's why it's important that she took the decision to go, and I welcome the fact that the new leadership contest will be a short one. You know, by Friday next week, this time, we will have a new Prime Minister. I think whatever the party does, we need to get behind whoever is the new Prime Minister and ensure that we have some direction and some stability, because that's what the country is crying out for, and the Conservative Party.
Well, according to the Mirror, the public are crying out for that.
But now,
there you go.
Now, see, I'm of a split opinion. I understand where the calls for general election are coming from now. Well, but the reality is Labour aren't offering any alternative.
Well, it doesn't matter, though, does it, if Labour are offering... I mean, you can't have yet another unelected Prime Minister, can you? I mean, people are just losing patience with this.
Look, the party was elected with a, fantastic majority back in 2019. There was the levelling up agenda and then now the growth agenda. The Conservatives have a mandate. We don't have a presidential system where you elect a president. We do elect a party. The Conservative Party does have a mandate, but we need to get on with the job.
Mm.
And do you think Rishi Sunak now could do a good job? I mean, that's who you were supporting this summer in the leadership election. He's now the bookies' favourite to take over from Liz Truss. What do you make of that?
Look, you never know how these things will go. Personally, I still think Rishi is probably the best option, given the timings that we have and the fact that he has, he went through the hustings, he's tested the waters, he is popular. I think he is the safest option right now, and it's probably the best option. However, the likes of Boris also are extremely popular still with membership. So,
I was going to say, with all of this, it's the membership are going to be peeved, aren't they? They're going to be peeved that they've gone through this whole process. They've elected someone who's now sort of in effect been booted out again. They didn't like Rishi.
Well, I don't know if I'd say they didn't like Rishi. He's still, 45% of the vote. He still commanded a strong amount of votes. But the reality is, at the time, the same way I supported and backed Liz's growth agenda. I agree with the low tax principle and growing the economy. Just now wasn't the right time, and that's why, the same concerns that Rishi Sunak echoed, I echoed him, which is why I backed him.
The Telegraph is reporting that Boris Johnson is pressing Rishi Sunak to reach out and for them to get back together. And if that happens, that will be a remarkable olive branch. Do you think we could see that happen?
Oh, I don't know. At the moment, never say never. Politics is such a fast-moving time at the moment. I'm not sure that would necessarily be in the best interests. Again, I do think we need a clear new direction and whilst Rishi and Boris did work very well together, is more of the same necessarily the best idea? I'm not sure.
I don't know. You say a new direction. You mentioned earlier on, you support the growth. You talked about there was a levelling up mandate and then the growth mandate. Well, that growth project has gone, hasn't it, now? Because that was all down to Trussonomics and that's all been ripped to shreds now. So is there a growth mandate for this country?
I think the long-term vision of, growing the economy and low tax is a basic core Conservative principle. So that's never going to go away. However, at the moment, the Conservative policy and aim is for fiscal stability. So therefore, take what's necessary to get inflation under control, because unless you get inflation under control, you're not going to grow the economy.
Isn't this a poison chalice, though, for anybody who takes on this role? It's almost a question of who would want it. There's something like 12 factions in the Conservative Party right now. I mean, whoever takes over has to try and unite the party. It seems like an impossible task at the moment.
Look, I see it bigger than the party. The Conservative Party will come together. There is a global crisis at the moment. Global economies are struggling. It's not just the UK. And therefore, I still, believe that the Conservatives are the best ones to lead the country forward to tackle head-on the issues.
But it's about mitigating losses, isn't it, come a general election, whenever that might happen now. And I know no member of Parliament ever wants to say that they don't think they will win an election, right?
No.
But the reality is it now looks very uncertain, very unlikely that the Conservatives would win a general election.
Look, the reality, we have been in power for 12 years. There is always, if you look at history, parties go in and out of favour. So it is the next general election was always going to be difficult. There is local elections next year. I myself am up for elections. I know other councillors are worried that national picture could influence how people vote locally. So, of course, there is concerns, but at the same time, my main concern is the economy and the cost of living, and therefore I still believe that the Conservatives are the best party to deliver that.
I'm slightly intrigued. You've got a Conservative pin badge on.
Yes.
It's the old logo.
Yes.
It's way before David Cameron, that logo. I'm intrigued as to why you choose to wear that and not the current Conservative Party logo. I have all of the lapel pins. I like to rotate between them. But again, I am a strong believer in traditional Conservative values and traditional Conservative core principles. And therefore, that's why I think, I'm sort of slightly harking back to a time of where we had a clear direction and clear vision, and that's what I want for us going forward. OK. Rishi, Fernando, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
OK, let's bring you up to date with what's going on today. The US says Iranian military trainers were in Crimea as they help Russian forces operate Iranian-made drones to attack targets in Ukraine. That's despite Iran and Russia both denying the allegations. Thursday saw day one of forced power cuts in Ukraine since the war began, in order for repairs to be made to damaged energy plants.
A jury has found Kevin Spacey not liable in a civil sex abuse trial. The House of Cards actor was accused of sexual abuse towards Star Trek actor Anthony Rapp. Jurors found Mr. Rapp didn't prove his claim that Mr. Spacey made an unwanted sexual advance on him when he was 14.
A hospital's regulator has said maternity services in England are the worst they've ever been, with 2 in 5 units ranked as inadequate. The Care Quality Commission says it has deep concerns about quality of care given to mothers and babies, with systematic issues within leadership and culture. Its report calls maternity unit issues a national challenge.
A think tank has warned that household food bills have gone up by about £11.4 billion this year. That's £407 for the average family, or about £34 a month. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit has found combined impacts of climate and oil and gas prices have driven up the bills, showing the risk of having a food system reliant on fossil fuels. I suppose a lot of that must be about transporting the food, then, if the system's reliant on fossil fuels. So you don't really think of food being reliant on fossil fuels.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it?
That's
how it comes, Stephen. I just think it just appears, gets dropped off.
Like magic.
Yeah, exactly. No, it comes in the vans and the lorries.
Yeah, but so it's just when you think about these, it's how everything is interconnected, isn't
It's
it?
true. It's very, very true. I've just had a tweet in from Steve who says, right, tea and toast on the go. Liz Kershaw's going to be on the papers today. Can't wait to join Ellie Costello and Stephen. GB News. That's you on Twitter. So good morning to you, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And Liz and David Mellor will be here at about 25 to. Now, back to inflation, should we? Because we know it's running at more than 10%. Many people are cutting back on spending to make their ends meet.
Well, this has led to worrying signs for the retail sector, who are yet to recover from losses suffered during the pandemic.
Well, let's talk to business and finance commentator Michael Wilson. Morning to you, Michael. I know we're expecting net borrowing figures and retail sales figures out by about 7 o'clock this morning. I mean, what are we likely to see?
I think they're going to be ugly one way or the other. I mean, even if there's a slight improvement in retail sales, which looks, I have to say, relatively unlikely, the way to look at the retail figures is to think, well, this is the run-up to Christmas. This is when retailers actually make the most of their money. And yet you look at surveys. You quoted one this morning. I've got another one from the Financial Conduct Authority, which shows that 8 million people are actually making now a choice between actually keeping warm and eating. And that's quite considerable. So really, the idea of splashing out at the shops is not going to be part of the majority of 8 million people's budget by any stretch of the imagination. You mentioned inflation up. Last month, up September, the average figure was 10.1%. So we're into double figures. That wasn't an enormous surprise, but I think you also quoted, and I've got some other figures as well, and we can throw these around all day, but food inflation is the big part of all that. Food prices are up about 14% on where they were a year ago. So if you're putting all that together and you're putting all those strains on people's wallets and purses and so on, I think that whatever the retail say, I don't think people need to be told this from these so-called headline figures. They know how their budgets are going to be. And we haven't even got into winter yet, have we? So we don't really know the effects of what those energy prices are going to be. And also, what about the people who have mortgages and they're coming up now, fixed term ones coming up for renewal as we speak, maybe more next year. These are going to be further strains on people's so-called disposable income. These headline figures are somewhere up in the air. The fact of it is, when people are going shopping, they're probably going to cheaper supermarkets, buying own brand goods, and also really reflecting on the fact that their bills are rising enormously. I mean, a food bill up 14% on a year is big stuff.
Michael, as you say, this is a sector already on its knees, isn't it, emerging from the coronavirus pandemic. And now we have people who are worried about their energy bills, worried about their mortgage bills, and spending less on the shops. I mean, it's an absolute blow for this industry.
It is a blow for retail, and really a lot of the big retail operations are having to reinvent themselves. Tesco's chairman was talking almost in charitable terms for what his supermarket is prepared to do as far as food prices are concerned. So yes, department stores are having to reinvent themselves. A lot of them are closing. A lot of coffee bars are closing as well. More people still working from home, and so on. So you've got everything really stacking up against the retail sector. I think one way in which councils might be persuaded to work, I say might be, it's a big might, is to reduce business rates and make it more easy for people to actually shop, because however bad and however ugly the figures are, people do like the fact that they can go into shops, meet their friends and so on. And I'm not being patronising about this. I mean, this is part of life. It always has been. And actually touch products rather than buying them online, if indeed that's what they do. My point is that I feel as though that disposable income, whichever way retail manages to play it and manages to improve its performance, is going to be very, very difficult indeed, simply for all the reasons I've just said. I think prices are rising, so hugely at the moment.
But the problem is, Michael, that a lot of, particularly small in fact, not just small retailers actually at the moment, and particularly since the pandemic, retailers have become so dependent on the Christmas boost. Well, There might be a Christmas boost this year, but it's likely, looking at all of this, that it's going to be much, much smaller than these companies need.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there was Halloween, which was invented by the United States. Well, I don't remember that as a kid, but Halloween is so. There's that big one. There's Black Monday. There's Black Friday. So-called black because retailers' books are supposed to go into the black from the red as a result of all this. And then the run up to Christmas, which seems, as you will no doubt be observing, seems to start earlier every year. Will it actually save retailers this time around? I mean, we used to have the January sales. I think those are completely out of the window, or rather stuck on the windows right now. I think there are plenty of sales around and about. I'm sure that retailers are actually pulling their hair out to try to work out how to make us go and spend at the shops. And my point is that household budgets are really now impacting so heavily on people's disposable income. And those prices are not going to go down in the near future.
Michael Wilson, business and finance commentator, thank you so much for your time this morning.
OK, we've got much more to come for you this morning, including keeping you fully up to date on the latest news about the Tory leadership race. No one's thrown their hat into the ring just yet. They're going to need 100 votes, though, from fellow MPs to even get into the race. So there's only going to be 3 people who are going to be able to run for this, and then they'll be hoping that 2 of them drop out, frankly, so that it doesn't have to go to the membership. But anyway, if we get any news on that, we'll let you know.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A mix of some sunny spells, but plenty of blustery showers today as the winds pick up. But those winds still bringing in mild air, so it's not cold if you're just about to step out the door. There's low pressure moving in, though, from the southwest, bringing bands of showers, some already in across Wales and southwest England. They'll continue to track northwards as we go through the rest of the day. Some heavy ones arriving in Northern Ireland before lunchtime, parts of northwest England and the Midlands too. They are tending to move through because the breeze is picking up. And notice across eastern England, a lot drier compared to yesterday, but even here later on there will be some showers. Staying fairly damp across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere across Scotland, dry and bright until these showers move in through the afternoon. And everywhere it's mild. Temperatures above average by a few degrees. In the south, again, 17, 18 perhaps, with a bit of sunshine, 19 Celsius. But if you do get a bit of sunshine, don't expect it to last. More showers moving in through the evening time. They'll be heavy in places. They will still be moving through because it will be quite blustery. And notice too, certainly across England and Wales, through the early hours, the showers tend to fade. So many places here become dry as we head into the weekend. Still pretty mild as well, double digits for many this time tomorrow morning. And actually Saturday will be by and large a fine day for a good part of England and Wales. Some showers in the far northwest of England, chance of 1 or 2 showers across the southeast and later on into the southwest. There will be showers tomorrow across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Won't be quite as windy tomorrow, and it will again be mild. Look at these temperatures, 14, 15 degrees across the north, further south, 17, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius, again with light winds. That really won't feel like October. Come Sunday, it stays mild, but the breeze will pick up once more. Yes, there will be some sunshine around, but again, most places are going to see some showers on Sunday too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie at 6:25. Now, there are several big questions then that need answering, and perhaps you could answer them for us. First one is, who replaces Liz Truss? Because whatever else you think, there is going to have to be a new Prime Minister by next Friday, a week today, at the very latest. The second question is, does there then have to be a general election?
Yes.
Now, the Mirror is saying we need a general election now. They also say at the top, the British people demand. Well, do you demand? Interestingly, I did a Twitter poll. Now, Twitter polls are not scientific, as you well know. But on my Twitter poll, 80% of people said they wanted a general election.
Yeah.
Now, I was surprised that it was that high. But is that the only way forward? Just to clear out now? Because you know that if there's a general election anytime soon, the polls all suggest that Labour would not only win, but win substantially. Is that what you want? Is that you know, if you run out of patience with what is going on in government at the moment?
Well, it's certainly what Labour and Lib Dems want. We'll be speaking to the Lib Dems a little bit later on. But I actually think for the first time, Tories are thinking it. They're saying they want a fresh mandate. They want to take this to the public. They've had enough, some of them. I mean, Charles Walker we heard from this week, a loyal Conservative MP.
Yeah, former deputy chair of the 1922 committee.
Yeah, and he was saying he's had enough. You know, he's out at the next election.
He was furious.
He's choosing to go anyway, but he's absolutely furious.
Mel's been in touch. Morning, Mel. She says the media are the ones calling for a general election. Nobody I know wants one. Who are these people that are demanding a general election? Labour, Lib Dems, Scottish Nationals? Well, yes. I mean, you're quite right,
obviously,
Mel.
Yeah.
Yes, but at the moment, you see, if you look at the polls, then Labour is commanding more support of the British public than the Conservatives and any other party by a lot. So therefore, they could then turn around and say, well, that means a majority of the people want a general election. So you see how they're using those figures. But yeah, I mean, of course, they're calling for one. They're desperate for one now.
Of course they are. And I mean, I think it was very interesting yesterday seeing Keir Starmer speak to the TUC. A few weeks ago, I think he would have had quite a tough time standing in front of the TUC and doing a speech. But I think there was quite a lot of goodwill where they were thinking perhaps we could see a Labour government in power soon. I did my own polling, you know, on Twitter yesterday, yes. And again, it's not exact science. We've been very busy, haven't we?
Have been.
It was my day off yesterday, but I was still working away here. Anyway, 74% of the vote, and there were 6,200 votes, 74% said they wanted to see this man back at number 10. Boris Johnson, 2.0, and his face is appearing on many of the papers this morning. He couldn't, could he? Well, Boris bounced back to number 10. That's on the Daily Express. There's on several of the papers. What do you make? Do you think Boris Johnson could be the one to fix this mess? Many people saying he's the only one with a mandate.
See, it's interesting. Would it fix the mess, or would it? You see, this is what I've been saying now. You're probably fed up with me saying it over the past week, but even if there's a general election in 18 months, 2 years, it seems very unlikely at this stage. You may not want to hear this. It seems very unlikely that the Tories would win it, to be honest, when you look at what the polling at the moment. So it's about mitigating the losses. It's about keeping as many people on side as possible Is Boris the one who could do that more than Rishi? They're saying it's a sort of competition between Rishi and Boris at the moment. Who will the general public vote for more, even if it's not enough to win another general election? I mean, you can imagine what's going on in all the tea rooms and bars and things in Parliament at the minute, what they're talking about. But we want to know what you think, please. So do get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And we will share as many of them as we can throughout the programme. Well, there's lots more to come, including all of your news and views and this morning's papers as well, so stick with us.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It is 6:32. Good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Let's take a look at some of today's front pages. And the Times leads on the potential shocking return to power of Boris Johnson after Liz Truss's resignation.
The Guardian says it's the bitter end with the departure of the Prime Minister after just 45 days.
The Daily Mail has Boris versus Rishi as another leadership contest is launched.
The Telegraph covers the historically short leadership of Liz Truss as Boris Johnson suggests he can save the party from electoral wipeout.
Well, it's time to go through the papers now, and joining us this morning is the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Very pleased to have you both with us this morning. Astonishing times. Let's start in the Times, shall we, David? This is Truss resigns, Johnson weighs return to power.
Yes, I mean, I think there are various disasters that could overtake this country, but few are worse than the idea of Boris getting back. It's interesting, though.
Why?
Look, Boris is a very brilliant man at what he's good at, which is cheering people up and being amusing. Boris has no visible integrity whatsoever, and he cannot run a government that has any sense of what I would call the necessary level of gravitas that you need. And I mean, I spent 11 years as a minister, and the Gardens, number 10, was a very boring place. And if I'd been out there swilling a bit of cheap Spanish wine and eating chorizo in Margaret Thatcher's day, I'd have had my ears clipped, right? I would. She'd literally have clipped my ears. Boris, it was like sort of running a Chicago speakeasy. Boris finds it impossible to actually be what a prime minister has to be in terms of presenting a properly grave face to the world and behaving with integrity. And when we had this dismal farce where the deputy chief whip in charge of party discipline was the worst groper and nuisance in Parliament. I mean, you couldn't make it up, really.
Well, he's the only one, arguably, out of any of the candidates with a mandate. I mean, in 2019, it was a huge win for him, especially in a third term for the Tory party. I mean, he is an electoral winner, and is that not what the Tories need right now?
Yeah, but at a certain point, people begin... I think at a certain point, Boris, fell off the wedding cake. He fell off the wedding cake because he had everything except the seriousness of purpose to do the job. I mean, and let's try not to forget about the fact that, he delivered Brexit on the basis all you had to do was pass an act of Parliament, and that was Brexit. But of course, that was not the end, or even the beginning of the end. To be very Churchillian, it was merely the end of the beginning. And he couldn't then get a grip and get capable ministers in who could actually do all the work that needed to be done to ensure that we maximise the benefit from Brexit. And I think the papers are therefore slightly full of this. Boris v Rishi, says the Mail, fight for the soul of the Tories. And, I mean, the Mail have always been more favourably disposed to Boris than you would expect. But I think that Boris is a bad thing because, for the Tories, because he throws dust in the eyes of others. They've got to make a fresh start. And they've got to make a fresh start with somebody who is capable of actually offering proper, assured, integrity-heavy rather than integrity-light leadership.
Ms. Kershaw.
Well, I couldn't disagree more. As you know, I've supported Boris Johnson on this programme through all the attacks he was enduring, and which I thought were petty and trivial. But the thing about Boris Johnson is he doesn't fit the mould. And, he's a rock and roll politician. He understands people. Why was he so popular? Why did people defect the Tories in their droves in places like I come from, in the, post-industrial, in-decline northwest of England? He's got that charisma. I think David hit the nail on the head and said he cheers people up. God, imagine the pandemic and the lockdowns with somebody like Jeremy Hunt, I'll say it carefully, in charge, or even Theresa May. He lifted the mood. He's a fantastic orator. Whether what the policies were right or wrong, he made the public follow him and believe in them. We were the first country in the world to get the jabs in our arms. And that was partly because he handed it over to somebody competent and she ran with it. I mean, if Boris can't select good ministers, then why are we even being offered Sunak? He was his Chancellor. Liz Truss was a great trade secretary under Boris. I'm sick of being maligned. Now, whether or not it's a good idea for him to make a comeback is another matter, and mainly, I think, because what we need now is stability. And he's still having this inquiry. I think it's been led by Yvette Cooper to assess whether he broke the ministerial code. And if, say, in 3 months' time, say he became Prime Minister again, and in 3 months' time it was judged that he couldn't be forced to resign because the Prime Minister makes that decision. He could excuse himself, but it wouldn't be good.
But Liz, I'm not going to disagree with you, because I think what you say, dare I say, is what a lot of people will think. I think there isn't the problem with Boris. What he should have done is said, all this nonsense about lockdowns and all of this is a lot of, mad doctors who are actually insisting on this, and we should say no to it. Instead of which, what he did was really the worst thing you can do in a democracy. Everybody else in the country was expected to agree with these stupid rules, while he and his friends had a good old party in number 10. And it got worse than that, because there were people who obeyed what he said, who couldn't see close relatives die.
Well, I
just think it's disgraceful that Boris doesn't have a conscience in that way.
Well, I said before in this programme, I'm not saying it to milk it, but I, of all people, should have a grudge against him then, because my mum was chucked out of an NHS hospital and put to make room for COVID patients, sent to care home and 2 weeks later died.
Yes.
Probably of COVID, although she wasn't tested, but she just suddenly died. So I should have a grudge against him, but I haven't, because I sincerely believe that he actually kept it lockdowns light compared to what it would have been if we'd let Whitty and co have full run. He actually fought for freedom because he's a libertarian. Don't forget he caught it himself and, spent a couple of dodgy nights in a hospital ward. Can I just say, though, I don't think he's... If we can... Maybe we're jumping ahead here. I don't think he's seriously being presented as the next Prime Minister. I think this is tactical. I think it's to avoid a coronation in the Tory party, which would be, just after all the undemocratic things we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, that would just be the final nail in the coffin of our democracy. If, say, Sunak was just crowned by the parliamentary party. So, just as I suspect, and it's not an original idea of mine, that MPs voted tactically to make sure that the final 2 that were presented to members, like myself, were Sunak or Truss, because they thought Sunak would wipe the floor with her. He didn't, because people don't like somebody who stabs the Prime Minister in the back. So she wasn't the best candidate, but she won. And that was tactical by elements of the party. I think this is now a genius idea. Rather than just give, a free rein to Sunak to walk into number 10, this is really stirring the pot.
This is very well put. And I used to love it when I was at the bar, when an esteemed colleague would make an eloquent case out of absolutely nothing, and you're doing a very good job on that.
Mum, my dad wanted me to be a barrister.
You'd have made a very good barrister. The worrying thing is, you see, that Boris has always wanted to be somebody rather than do something. And I think the problem for Boris now, if he came back, he's already got the taste for the high life. If he can make $150,000 speaking a lot of, dumb Americans, why is he going to come back?
No, he doesn't want to, I don't believe he's serious about it. That's the point I'm trying to make. He likes,
But he wants to be there. He wants to be in the game. Because he can't bear anyone having a game that he's not in.
Well, if you'd been stabbed in the back by your Chancellor, wouldn't it be... revenge is best served up cold. This revenge is absolutely deep freeze temperature, because he's come back and he's standing there. He's already got more votes or pledges of allegiance from Tory MPs than Sunak. He's completely put the spanner in the way. He has. Oh, yes.
But I tell you what is. Well, I'd be interested to know about that. But look, but the point is that Boris is not serious about this. He just doesn't want to be left out.
Is he not? He
wasn't serious when he was Prime Minister the first time.
But he hasn't... I mean, it's no secret that he would like to have a comeback at some point.
Boris would rather be drinking, awful Spanish wine. I can't forgive him for that, really. And, if you're going to drink wine, you better drink...
Well, Prosecco's even worse.
I'm not a big Prosecco man either, tell you the honest truth. But the reality is that what Boris has failed to do ever is to get to grips with the detail. But I know it was who said the devil is in the detail, but it is. And you feel, the thing about Margaret Thatcher, bless her heart, she was a very difficult woman. I was a younger minister for 4 years, and she treated me, as I've said before, with even more contempt than my mother did. But the thing about Margaret Thatcher, nobody worked harder than she did. And she was on top of the detail, even if her interpretation of the detail sometimes was difficult. Boris never worked with the detail. There were boxes that he never opened. And he thinks you could fly by the seat of your pants, and a quick quip and a bit of a laugh it will compensate for that, but it won't.
But the problem with this discussion, if you like, is that it's very political rather than looking at the voters. John in Blythe Valley's been in touch. Morning, John. Said there can only be 2 democratic options, he says. Boris, yes, because he was elected, or a general election.
But you see, that isn't... Forgive me, I'm sounding pompous. Can you do something? Can you stick something up my backside or something? Stop me being
I've got a nice sausage sandwich in my back.
Yes, I'm being pompous. But look, at the end of the day... Where was I?
I never thought I'd say that to an ex-minister.
We were used to having sausages thrust everywhere.
Humour is essential. You need charisma. You need a leader with charisma.
But just on this constitutional point, my lord, the point is that if there is you're elected as a member of parliament, you're elected as a member of parliament for a term. You're not tied to some bloke you happen to think was a good thing at the time of the election. You're not tied to a policy. You have a doctor's mandate as a member of parliament to do whatever you think. And this idea is so spurious that, you know, because you were elected to support Boris, you have to continue to do so. And that is a fundamentally wrong interpretation of the British Constitution. You elect a member of parliament and then they're let loose on these issues. And in 5 years' time or 3 years' time, whatever it turns out to be, if they get it wrong, they're chucked out.
Oh, well...
Can I just quickly say, let's not forget the members, because at the end of the day, I know that, because my mum was a councillor for 50 years, at the end of the day, elections are won by the members, the boots on the streets, the feet on the ground, the leaflets through the letterbox, the knocking on doors, the canvassing. The people I know in local Conservative parties will work their socks off for Boris Johnson. They won't do it for Rishi Sunak.
Except, just very quickly, when I was a member of Parliament in a marginal seat, the membership of my parliamentary party, of my constituency party, was 3,000 to 5,000, depending. The Tory party has got 160,000 members in 600-odd constituencies. So, actually, there's a lot of myths about Boris, and the idea that people were all ready to turn out for Boris, I don't think they were. I think the trouble with politics these days is that people no longer want to get involved.
Well, look, talking about Boris has taken us through the Times, the Telegraph, the Sun and the Times again. So let's have a look at the Guardian. Liz, this is the golden handshake to the Prime Minister.
Well... For being Prime Minister, entitled to £115,000 to pay for... It's like you know, back to work job scheme. So they give you this money so that you can recruit staff and buy office equipment, and, you know, you're not going to be out in the cold, you're going to be able to work effectively. So everybody who's PM is entitled to the same. It's not in the rules.
Gets 115,000, even when they're not in Parliament.
Well, I don't think when this was...
it's not automatic,
when this was drawn up, I don't think... They don't get it just in one lump sum. I don't think when this was drawn up, they imagined that one person could be PM for 12 years and one could be PM for, you know... less than 50 days or whatever, but Liz Truss is entitled to it, so there is pressure now on her.
You see, no one's going to be giving her 150,000 to go to America and deliver a speech to a lot of our used car salesmen in Tucson.
No, well, that's one of her problems.
Need the money. Boris could have given that money away. It would have been a great gesture. Boris has been serious about coming back. He would have done that. Whereas I bet he's trousered it. It's already been spent on cheap Spanish wine. It's already gone, I expect.
Yeah, you're obsessed with this bloody
I'd love to know what...
Yeah, but I had to read about this.
Yeah.
About these parties in Number 10, and they used to go out and get caseloads of this cheap Spanish wine from the supermarket round the corner. And I'm sorry, I'm sure my liver isn't in great state, but it has been ruined by better wine than that.
I'm going to find out what wine he does choose.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
I just sort of think, and you know, this is a big controversial thing to say, because people said pressure on Liz Truss not to take this golden handshake. If I was her, I'd take it.
I think she deserves for the bullying on the industrial scale it's been from some elements of the media and from our own MPs for the last few weeks. That poor, just from a human point of view, I think she deserves every penny. Because at the end of the day, she tried to do something she truly believed in and was different. She presented it very badly, and she's been misrepresented.
Because none of the papers have got any ideas about what she might do. They assume she'll probably just quietly melt away.
Well, yeah. Look, we have got, David, I'm giving you a warning here, 60 seconds. The Times, looking at the runners and riders, says that all of this could mean that Penny Mordaunt is the unity choice moving forward. Penny Mordaunt, who was accused, it has to be said, of not being across any of her briefs.
Yes, I know. I must say that she was in the House. She made a sort of holding statement in the House when Liz Truss went missing. And I thought she's very good. She's obviously got a very good style in the House. But you see, the problem is she's never been in the Cabinet. And, you know, you really do need a heavyweight, someone who knows where the bodies are buried and can actually do that. And that's where I think there's a very limited list of people And it doesn't include Penny Mordaunt, although she'll no doubt get a good job.
Yeah, OK. Look, it's fascinating to talk. It's interesting. We don't need to actually sort of look at all the individual front pages as we chat to people because they're all got the same story on. But anyway, David, Liz, thank you. We'll catch up with you both a little bit later on. Let's talk to one of our GB News viewers and listeners, should we, who's in North Hampshire. That's Mark Thomas, who is actually also a member of the Conservative Party. Morning to you, Mark. What are you thinking?
Morning, Stephen. Morning, Ellie. Well, it's been an incredible few days. I really don't know what to make of it at times. I think I voted for Liz Truss. I think she's been treated shamefully by, as Liz Kershaw just alluded to, parts of the media, and indeed many of our MPs, I'm afraid to say, in the party. Where we go from here, I believe we're going to get a vote at membership level. But that will be based on the two candidates that are potentially put forward by the party, selected by the MPs on Monday. My understanding of the rules is if one candidate gets over 100 votes, or he or she is in on the last two. But if a second doesn't make it, it could be an attempt to perform a coronation, and I think that will go down very badly with the membership of the party.
Who would you like to see in the final two?
I wouldn't like to see Rishi Sunak. I'm not a Sunak supporter. I think he precipitated Boris's downfall. I think it's inevitable he probably will be one of the last two. And personally, I think if Boris does throw his hat in the ring, I think Boris should make it as well.
It's interesting. Have you not got concerns about... I mean, from what David Mellor was just saying, I mean, a lot of people in the know say, nice, charismatic, charming, vote winner, but not necessarily across all the briefs. Does that not worry you?
Well, I think he was never a details man, Stephen. I think that was well understood within the party. However, I think he did appoint people who are capable of carrying out their briefs. He appointed Rishi Sunak, for example. So he may not be across all the detail, but I don't think a prime minister necessarily has to have those qualities. He has to know enough and to choose the right people to get the job done. And I think he proved that in his time, particularly in London, when he was mayor of London. And I think he has delivered. I mean, he delivered on Brexit. He got us through what has been the worst pandemic we've ever seen, I think, since for over 200 years. And I think to that end, he did a good job. Yes, there were mistakes. I think he obviously has some flaws, personality-wise. But I also think there was a concerted attempt within the media and large parts of the parliamentary party that don't support him to oust him. So, I mean, I thought it was a mistake to get rid of him in the first place. That's my view.
I mean, Mark, this all relies on him reaching that 100 MPs threshold by 2 p.m. on Monday. I think it was 60 ministers or MPs got rid of him. Do you think he can meet that threshold of 100 MPs?
That is going to be a challenge. From what I'm seeing on social media, he's up over 50 possibly now. I think that is going to be the key question. Can he breach that threshold? But as I said earlier, I think if it's only Rishi Sunak, for example, that breaches the 100, and then there's an attempt to perform a coronation, it's similar to Theresa May's when she became leader. I think that's not going to go down well with large parts of the membership. And as Liz Kershaw said earlier, it's those, well, from the membership, which is relatively small. I agree with David Mellor on that. The activists who actually get out there, deliver the leaflets, knock doors. There's a large portion of those people who would not want Sunak as leader.
General election in all of this, Mark, because as much as you may not want one, the pressure actually with another unelected Prime Minister, if you want to phrase it in that sense, the pressure is actually going to be immense and unrelenting.
It will be, Stephen. And you could argue that's another reason to have Boris back, because he had a mandate from the people in 2019, whereas obviously Liz Truss didn't. And if Rishi Sunak or someone else becomes leader other than Boris, that would be an accusation that would be difficult to defend. I concede that.
Mark, the biggest challenge, one might argue, is uniting the Conservative Party. I mean, it's never been more fractious, has it?
Absolutely, Ellie. I totally agree. I mean, personally, my politics are to the right of the party. I see a large swathe of the party on the other side, if you like, centre left, who, to me, don't represent sort of the same values that I hold. I strongly believe Liz Truss's mini budget was the right way to go in terms of low taxation and go for growth. It's been painted as a tax cutting budget. In fact, the only tax cut would have been at the 45% rate. Everything else was actually to stop the increases in taxation which were going to be imposed. And corporation tax is a great example. We're actually going to see a huge corporation tax increase, which pushes way above some of the competitor countries in Europe, and I think that's going to be a problem going forward. Although I do understand, of course, there's a hole in the finances which need to be shored up.
Mark, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. And if you want to join in that conversation, you know how to get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We're back after the weather.
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A mix of some sunny spells, but plenty of blustery showers today as the winds pick up. But those winds still bringing in mild air, so it's not cold if you're just about to step out the door. There's low pressure moving in, though, from the southwest, bringing bands of showers, some already in across Wales and southwest England. They'll continue to track northwards as we go through the rest of the day. Some heavy ones arriving in Northern Ireland before lunchtime, parts of northwest England and the Midlands too. They are tending to move through because the breeze is picking up. And notice across eastern England, a lot drier compared to yesterday, but even here later on there will be some showers. Staying fairly damp across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere across Scotland, dry and bright until these showers move in through the afternoon. And everywhere it's mild. Temperatures above average by a few degrees. In the south, again, 17, 18 perhaps, with a bit of sunshine, 19 Celsius. But if you do get a bit of sunshine, don't expect it to last. More showers moving in through the evening time. They'll be heavy in places. They will still be moving through because it will be quite blustery. And notice too, certainly across England and Wales through the early hours, the showers tend to fade. So many places here become dry as we head into the weekend. Still pretty mild as well, double digits for many this time tomorrow morning. And actually Saturday will be by and large a fine day for a good part of England and Wales. Some showers in the far northwest of England, chance of 1 or 2 showers across the southeast and later on into the southwest. There will be showers tomorrow across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Won't be quite as windy tomorrow, and it will again be mild. Look at these temperatures, 14, 15 degrees across the north, further south, 17, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius, again with light winds. That really won't feel like October. Come Sunday, it stays mild, but the breeze will pick up once more. Yes, there will be some sunshine around, but again, most places are going to see some showers on Sunday too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
The race is on to find a new Prime Minister, the third this year.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Friday, the 21st of October, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Em.
We're live across the whole of the UK, on your TV, on your radio and online, so wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, this time next week, Britain should have a new Prime Minister. Liz Truss will go down in history as Britain's shortest ever serving PM. Her government collapsed in the wake of the failed mini-budget last month, and she was forced to resign yesterday.
The latest net borrowing figures and retail sales figures will be released within the next hour. Stay with us, we'll make sense of how this affects your finances.
We'll have the latest results from our exclusive GB News People's poll. We asked, do you want Boris back? Find out how you voted.
And as ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbnews@gbnews.uk, and it's GB News on Twitter.
Well, so the main news for you this morning is that Liz Truss has resigned as Conservative Party leader. She'll be Prime Minister, actually, until the new person is put in place. But she's only had 45 days in office so far, making her the shortest-serving British Prime Minister, or she will be by the time it all ends, in history.
The fast-tracked contest to find out the next party leader has already started, and we are likely to see the new Prime Minister, the third in as many months, by the end of next week.
If not before.
If not before.
Let's talk to former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, who's here in the studio for us this morning. Good to see you.
Morning.
I mean, we're all talking about next Friday. It could actually happen a lot quicker than that, couldn't it?
It could. The nominations for candidates who want to put themselves forward for the party leadership closes on Monday. So we'll know then who thinks that they will have the opportunity to secure the support of their colleagues. They've got to get over 100 members to support them. That's quite a big threshold. I think it's the right decision by the 1922 committee.
So there can only be 3?
They could be only 3, exactly. And I think at the last count, I think both Rishi, Liz and Penny both got over 100 votes at the final hurdle at the last leadership election. So it's all to play for. But you would hope that this comes to an end as quickly as possible, and we'll have a Prime Minister that everybody can get behind by Friday.
What's your prediction then, Charlie? Who are we going to see in that final 2 or 3 on Monday?
Well, I think the papers are full of speculation, and the front runners are obviously Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt. I think they will be the front runners. I think they will be the final 2. I think Rishi is obviously the favourite because of the economic problem that we find ourselves in, and being a candidate in the last round. The plan that he was putting forward to deal with the difficult decisions that the economy faces, I think, have been proven right. And I think, just on the back of not just the economy, but his ability to communicate, where Liz, perhaps, by her own admission, said that she wasn't the best. And that's exactly what we need. It's someone that's got the economic competence and the communication skills to take us through the next phase of this journey.
There is an argument to say, well, look, put Penny Mordaunt in number 10 and Rishi Sunak back in number 11. I guess he wouldn't want that. He doesn't want to be back in number 11, does he? But he wants the top job.
I think that's right. And I think, Jeremy Hunt has come in. He was brought in by Liz to calm the markets on the back of her failed mini-budget. And so I think to change Chancellor again may be a step too far. So I think it would be right to keep Jeremy where he is. If there was going to be a deal between Rishi and Penny, you could have Rishi as the Prime Minister, you could put Penny as Foreign Secretary, keeping Jeremy as Chancellor, and then you start to grow a cabinet that reaches across the political divide, particularly within the party, and it will be a government of all talents.
And how do you think Rishi Sunak is feeling right now? Because he's been vindicated in all of this, really, hasn't he? He's one of the only people who can say, I told you so. He was almost absolutely bang on. It's his policies that have been brought in now pretty much by Jeremy Hunt.
I think that's right, and I think he won't express it in that way. Anyone that's a Conservative, any Conservative MP, will be feeling very sorry about what's happened. It's not been a good time to be a Conservative, and the one thing you need from the next leader of the party is to be able to bring everybody together. And look, for all of Liz's faults, again, some of the policies were not bad. They were clearly just at the wrong time and fit a particular ideology within the Conservative Party that wasn't right for what the country needs now. So I think Rishi is perfectly entitled to say, look, I did give you these warnings before. This has come to pass, but now I'm the man to get us back on track.
It's interesting then, if you... Public servants, right, and you know this all too well, Charlie, right? They say they're there to serve the country, serve the public. A lot of them are there to further their careers. I mean, as we all would be. I mean, let's be honest, it's how we all operate as individual human beings. Rishi Sunak would not please the Conservative Party membership. He's not necessarily going to be a vote winner come the next general election, whenever that is, as someone like Boris. Now, Boris is all over the papers. He's all over our inbox. That's what people want, right? That's what the general public want Boris back. Is it time? Do you think MPs are going to be prepared to say, we need to do not what is best for our electoral chances at the next election, but we need to do what is best for the country?
Well, it's highly tempting to look to someone, and Boris is someone of many, many qualities. He's a brilliant campaigner. He's an excellent communicator. He was able to win the Conservative Party its 80-seat majority back in 2019. That is an absolute credit to him because of his long-standing position in politics and public life. He's well known. His name recognition knows no bounds. And so it would be tempting, if you're particularly in a red wall seat, to think that Boris could be the man to keep me as an MP in these particular areas. But I think, whilst that is a fact, and whilst that was the case in 2019, you can't escape what's happened since then. And when Boris was in number 10, we lost by-elections. We lost in Tiverton and Honiton, we lost in Chesham and Amersham, and we lost in North Shropshire. These were not small majorities. These were into their thousands that we lost to the Liberal Democrats. And I think that was a reflection at the time on the way in which Downing Street was run under Boris. So for all of his qualities, we've seen the issues that he came up against, which resulted in his own resignation, and I just don't think it would be wise to go back to that. I think we need a break from that, a new leader, and a new start.
Is a new start possible, though? Can we unite, or can the next Prime Minister unite the Conservative Party, or is this beyond repair now? I mean, I think the past 4 Tory leaders have had to resign because of splits in the party, ultimately. I mean, is this something that can even be fixable at this point?
It has to be. And I think if there's one thing that the Tory party is good at, it's winning elections. And the one thing that unites it is having an opposition, and the opposition, clearly in this case, is the Labour Party. So who is going to be the candidate that is going to win you your seat again at the next election? Who can take the fight to Labour? Because I think for, however down in the doldrums we are in terms of the polling today, it's because of the mess of our own making. I don't think it's a particular cause to bring in Sir Keir Starmer. I don't think he has got the popularity. I don't think Labour are putting forward any policies. So, we are down in the polls because it's the mess of our own making. So anybody that can take the fight to the Labour Party, I think, will be that one that can unite the party.
Lee in Cornwall says, I'm very unhappy with how things have panned out. It seems the majority of the country wants a general election, and the Tories once again ignored the British people and just did what they wanted to do. John in Manchester says there should be a general election. It can't be left to these self-important idiots to keep choosing an unelected Prime Minister. Let the people decide. I mean, look, there's going to be pressure from Labour, Lib Dems, SNP and everybody else for a general election. That's politics. But there is a growing call within the general public to say, this needs to be put out to the people. You need to have a new mandate.
And I can understand that, but I think a general election will take far longer than what it will take to get a new leader in place, to get a new Prime Minister in number 10.
Well, yes, but I mean, I guess the argument would be something along the lines of you get somebody in, Rishi, for example, who then the pressure is going to be to say, right, we'll have a general election in February or whenever it might be. Something in the new year, plenty of time to organise it, try and get the country sorted out in the meantime. Is anybody, if it's him or whoever it may be, going to be able to resist the huge amount of pressure, unprecedented pressure, actually, to go to the people?
Well, I think, there will always be the argument to have a general election. Of course, that's what the opposition will want when you're that far ahead in the polls. But it's about doing what's right for the country. And what the right thing at the moment, it seems to me, is to obviously have a new Prime Minister in place. We're going through the winter months now, where there is always a winter crisis in the NHS, where people are facing higher energy bills, even though the government has stepped in to ensure that they're not raised up to the sky limits of £6,000. There is more to do in terms of reassuring the financial markets. There's more to do to get the economy moving. I think the new Prime Minister and the new team around them in the Cabinet need to get on with that. That's in the national interest. And then, of course, there may be other problems along the way that the team will have to deal with. But then, that might take you through to 2024, 2025, when you're going to have a general election anyway, perhaps not before, but we'll have to wait and see.
Do you think there'll be a complete... I mean, I know you get a new leader, there's a reshuffle, but do you think we'll see a total clear-out of the Truss cabinet? Apart from the new people who've been brought in, perhaps, over the last week.
I don't think so. I think one of, people will look back on Liz's time, and I think one of the early failings was not to have a broader church around her. It was just people that supported Liz during her campaign, and there were some clearly very talented people like Jeremy Hunt, like Grant Shapps, that were confined to the backbenches, who she now had to bring back in. So I think if you're going to command the support of the Tory party, to be that unifying candidate, then you need to have a government of all talents, and that will include people and backers that supported Liz.
OK. Charlie, really good to talk to you, as always. Thank you very much indeed. Well, what do you think about all of that? I mean, Phil says, definitely not. Just to clarify, it's the party that's voted in, not the PM, so the party still has its mandate, so no general election for him. Gordon says another general election. Now is not the time. Denise says no election. We voted for Boris. Navina says we need to put Boris back where he belongs. Stop all this nonsense.
Yeah, it's safe to say loads of Boris fans here. Erica, please stop saying Boris won the landslide election, though. Larry the Cat would have won with the same margin, as the people were so fed up with the Brexit saga. Bit of a different view there from Erica. And Graham says it's not going to happen and Boris won't be back either. The media jump from one sensational headline to another. Starmer and his cronies could finish this country with their taxing and borrowing policy. So do let us know what you think. We've got loads of views and we'll be sharing them throughout the programme.
Yes, we will. It is 12 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with the other headlines. And the US says Iranian military trainers were in Crimea helping Russian forces operate Iranian-made drones to attack targets in Ukraine. That's despite Iran and Russia both denying those allegations. Yesterday saw day one of forced power cuts in Ukraine since the war began, in order for repairs to be made, apparently, to damaged energy plants.
Kevin Spacey has won the civil sex abuse claim brought against him. Jurors found Star Trek actor Anthony Rapp didn't prove his claim that the House of Cards star had made sexual advances towards him when he was 14. Mrs. Spacey has denied any misconduct.
The hospital's regulator has said maternity services in England are the worst they've ever been, with 2 in 5 ranked as inadequate. The Care Quality Commission says it has deep concerns about the quality of care given to mothers and babies, with systemic issues within leadership and culture. Its report calls maternity unit issues a national challenge.
A think tank has warned households that food bills have gone up by a total of £11.4 billion this year. That's £407 for the average family, or nearly £34 a month. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit has found combined impacts of climate and oil and gas prices have driven bill costs, showing the risk of having a food system reliant on fossil fuels.
Oh, now inflation, that dreaded word at the moment, isn't it? We know it's running at more than just over 10% at the moment, so we are in those double figures, and many people, many of us, as a result, cutting back on our spending to make ends meet.
Well, this has led to worrying signs for the retail sector, who are yet to recover from losses suffered during the pandemic.
Well, the latest figures have just come out and retail sales fell 1.4% in September. That's the second month in a row.
Well, let's ask consumer and retail expert Kate Hardcastle what this means. Good morning to you, Kate. Thank you so much for your company this morning. So unpack this for us. What are we seeing in these figures?
I think we understand that confidence breeds confidence, Ali, and that when people don't feel that there's extra money, they're not going to spend. And we've certainly seen that in the retail figures. And I'm really pleased that you've mentioned just how challenging that can be for the retail environment too. I think when we hear retail, we tend to think about those big brands on the high street. But we know we've got millions of small organisations in hospitality and retail that have ridden a roller coaster ride whilst they've tried to combat and get through the COVID lockdowns, the lack of appetite for spend, hoping obviously again for a more productive spend time from consumers who this year have just felt incredibly challenged. Retailers' costs are going up, prices are going up, and we've seen that reflected in the fact that people are buying less when it comes to food and indeed when it comes to what we class more disposable items, where disposable spend, where it's not essential, perhaps clothing particularly, and furniture. So I think these are challenging times and still more to come. The mood music from retail and consumers alike is that this Christmas will be one that's very meaningful, but probably not one where they're going to be expecting to spend as much as they normally do.
Hey, Christmas, I mean, as you know, Kate, better than the rest of us, Christmas is the time that retailers rely on. It's a bit of a lifeline, especially over recent years. Christmas has been the lifeline that keeps them going for the rest of the year. Well, this year is going to prove problematic for them, isn't it, actually, for the next 12 months if they don't get enough money in over Christmas?
Absolutely right, because we know as soon as consumers hit that January, February time, it tends to just be a period where there's the reality check of credit card statements coming in and the fuel, particularly, that will be required at that time to heat the houses, keep people warm, get them from and to work. It's just going to be that reality hit. So if it's a challenging damp squib of a Christmas period, what we call peak September to December ahead, perhaps with a little flurry around Black Friday where people are trying to get the bargains, I think it's going to probably then lead into some very challenging months. And that's potentially going to see, again, changes on the high street, changes to organisations that maybe just cannot survive that long. I've heard from organisations over the past couple of months that probably going to have to close the doors just because they can't afford to fuel the premises anymore, let alone anything else to do with the sales factor. So it's really worrying. It's really concerning because those high streets, those communities serve more than a purpose of commercial reality. They actually are there providing company, somewhere to go, a place to be, if you like. And we don't want to see them in those shadows. We don't want to see them closed and with door after door empty. We want to see them bustling and hustling. Yes, it has to be a different high street, one of quality, not quantity, and a mix of businesses. But nobody wants this reality, Stephen.
You're completely right. And I mean, we haven't even got into the depths of winter yet. And there are going to be people who are really worried about getting through this winter. They're worried about their mortgages. They're worried about their rising energy bills as well. What are you seeing in the way that our shopping habits have changed in the past few months leading up to winter?
I always believe in the common sense of the consumer, Ellie, and you can see that in their basket spend. They're buying more frozen food, more tinned food. They're cutting back on really expensive items as they see it, as meats particularly and dairy have gone up significantly. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think in the main consumers feel that the retailers aren't trying to do their bit. Retailers, the big grocery brands, the bigger stores have certainly tried to work with supply chains, certainly tried to combat prices, tried to work with retailers, to manufacturers to ensure that we're not feeling the full brunt of those price increases. But reality has struck, and we've been talking about price increases on products, on essential goods like food, for over 12 months. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to spend, it's one of our only variables each week. If our rent and our mortgage is going up, if our fuel costs are going up, there's very little give in what we've got left over, and that tends to be on the items we're spending, food and anything else. So unfortunately, if your child needs a pair of shoes and there's no money in the budget, there is no money in the budget, and that has an immediate impact on the high street. Even for those who might have a little bit of cash, there are concerns there. I've been speaking to a lot of people in retirement this week who might have been on the high street, might have been having a little bit of a spend this week, but are so concerned about the unknown, the political instability, the talk of austerity, that they just really don't feel that they want to be out there spending. They want to keep what they have for what they're classing as darker days.
I mean, look, on all of this, I mean, adding to the woes, what sort of impact is it likely to have now that we know that this corporation tax rise cancellation has been reversed, so that corporation tax, which, it's going to go up 6% to 25%. I mean, on top of all the other woes that retailers are having, this is just another blow, isn't it?
It's just unmanageable for many of them, Stephen. Like I said, we've been talking about bakery businesses, pottery businesses that do these little pottery workshops, shutting the doors just because they can't even afford the fuel. Add into that the fact your custom might be down, you're not getting the sales in, your costs are spiralling, and then there's talk of the fact that maybe some saving measures that might have helped you with tax are actually going to be reversed out or going to be changed. It's almost too much. And I'm going to mention this because it's rarely talked about. There is, of course, a mental impact for the consumers in terms of the concern, the worry, the strain they're taking from this messaging every day. But that's the case too for a lot of retail owners, particularly those millions of smaller organisations. Truly imagine for a moment trying to run a business where you've had the pandemic to deal with, your supply of goods being challenged, and then people just not coming through the door. Then you've got rising spiralling costs. We've got people just saying, it is too much for me to deal with. It's too much uncertainty. It's too much in terms of the challenge to keep it going. I've fought my fights, but I can go on no longer. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's a grim picture. Kate, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you this morning. Now, Kate's up north in Yorkshire somewhere, and we'd love to know where you are, where you're watching us this morning, which is quite handy, actually, because David emailed in earlier on. He's a bit worried, Oh. Not that you're not fabulous, because Ellie Costello here is fabulous, let me tell you.
Stephen.
But he's worried because he hasn't seen Anne.
I know.
Where is she?
Don't be worried, David. Don't be worried.
No, because Anne, we can tell you, is watching. And let's show you the lovely picture. So there you go.
There she is.
She's in Malta. So thank you, viewer and listener Anne Diamond in Malta, for sending in this lovely picture, which is a laptop, watching on a laptop on a balcony with the sun rising just over the beautiful sea. Absolutely gorgeous. So she's having a well-deserved break.
It's all right for some, isn't it? I'd love to be in Malta.
Well, she was really poorly last weekend, so she's managed to recover. She had to delay her holiday for a couple of days till she was better. So she's finally gone out there now. She's having a lovely time with her sister.
Yeah, well, she's very dedicated as well. Still watching you, Stephen?
Oh,
Even on her holiday.
She's checking up on you.
I said, she's checking I'm doing a good job, keeping her seat warm for her.
Yeah.
Probably. But no, she'll be missing you. I'm sure she will, because it's the second weekend now.
Presents
without
back,
you.
Anne. Bring presents back.
Yeah.
Actually, she did say she's going to bring me a gift.
Some sweeties from the airport. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Nice. Fridge magnet.
And the sunshine, please. The sunshine. That is some good news, actually. I'll share that with you. Apparently, we're going to have an Indian summer in time for Halloween.
Oh.
So I read yesterday. Yes.
Oh, good. I can put my overcoat
I hope
back
I'm correct now I've said that out loud.
So
and
fed
to all
up
of you.
I'm getting up in the morning. I'm having to get my clothes on really quickly because it's so cold. It's that being in the 70s again.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, look, don't go anywhere. We've got lots more to come up. More politics. We're going to be talking to the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, in a couple of minutes.
Good morning. Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A mix of Some sunny spells, but plenty of blustery showers today as the winds pick up. But those winds still bringing in mild air, so it's not cold if you're just about to step out the door. There's low pressure moving in, though, from the southwest, bringing bands of showers, some already in across Wales and southwest England. They'll continue to track northwards as we go through the rest of the day. Some heavy ones arriving in Northern Ireland before lunchtime, parts of northwest England and the Midlands too. They are tending to move through because the breeze is picking up. And notice across eastern England, a lot drier compared to yesterday, but even here later on there will be some showers. Staying fairly damp across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere across Scotland, dry and bright until these showers move in through the afternoon, and everywhere it's mild. Temperatures above average by a few degrees. In the south, again 17, 18 perhaps, with a bit of sunshine, 19 Celsius. But if you do get a bit of sunshine, don't expect it to last. More showers moving in through the evening time. They'll be heavy in places. They will still be moving through because it will be quite blustery. And notice too, certainly across England and Wales through the early hours, the showers tend to fade. So many places here become dry as we head into the weekend. Still pretty mild as well, double digits for many this time tomorrow morning. And actually Saturday will be by and large a fine day for a good part of England and Wales. Some showers in the far northwest of England, chance of 1 or 2 showers across the southeast and later on into the southwest. There will be showers tomorrow across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Won't be quite as windy tomorrow, and it will again be mild. Look at these temperatures, 14, 15 degrees across the north, further south 17, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius, again with light winds. That really won't feel like October. Come Sunday, it stays mild, but the breeze will pick up once more. Yes, there will be some sunshine around, but again, most places are going to see some showers on Sunday too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Well, it is 7:27. Let's crack straight on then with the politics of the day. General election. Well, of course, opposition parties are calling for one now, understandably so, I guess, in the world of politics. Let's talk to the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey. Good morning to you. It's nice to see you. It's now the right time for a general election. It's not what the country actually needs, is it?
It absolutely is. And first of all, we see a very divided Conservative Party who can't provide the stability we need. We're only going to get the economic help to millions of struggling families and pensioners and businesses if we have political stability to be able to implement an economic plan to help our country. And the Conservative Party have shown they can't. We had Liz Truss trashing the economy. Before her, we had the Conservative MP saying they didn't have confidence in Boris Johnson because of his law-breaking and deceit. They've shown they're not fit to govern our country, so they have to go. And if they went in a general election, the British people could have their say, and then I think we could have the political stability we need.
I mean, we could argue against all those individual points you made, and a lot of our viewers and listeners would want me to. However, I'm not going to, because we know where we are with all of that. However, there is an argument to be said, isn't there, that actually at a time when we really are struggling, we need that bit of stability. Now, a general election, if there was one announced any time now, is not going to bring that stability till after Christmas. Surely it would take months to get this organised. And I would repeat my point, it isn't the time for that.
Well, before a general election, we would need in Parliament to put forward a sort of emergency package to make sure people who are struggling with their energy bills, struggling with their mortgages, can have some reassurance. I accept that. There has to be an agreement cross-party about what needs to be done to give that economic stability in the short term. That can be done really quickly. There's quite a lot of agreement actually in the opposition parties on one or two measures at least. Get that done, get that economic stability, and then because the Conservative Party, I think, is the barrier to good governments now, because they're so divided, because they're shambolic, then I think we do need them out of the way. And if we have them out of the way, we could have a fresh start. Liberal Democrats have been putting forward our positive agenda. When we've had chance to put that to people in parliamentary by-elections the last 16 months, we won 3. We beat the Tories in their heartland seats in places like Chesham, Amersham, in True Blue, Buckinghamshire, in North Shropshire, seat the Tories have held for 200 years. In East Devon, we beat them, overturning the largest majority ever overturned in a by-election. And then, of course, in the local elections last May, it was Liberal Democrats across the UK who had the best results. So, we are ready for that election and to put forward our positive plan.
I wanted to bring you an email from our viewer, David. David says, well, of course, Keir Starmer and the Lib Dems are demanding a general election, but what governmental experience can they actually bring? Absolutely none. David says it would be very dangerous. And he's got a point, hasn't he, Davey?
Well, I was Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, and my policies brought in tens of billions of pounds of investment. We quadrupled Britain's renewable power, for example. We made us the world leader in offshore wind. We brought down the cost of renewable power, so it's now the cheapest form of power, so we're more secure and it's more affordable for people. And I did that over 3 years in the cabinet. So I do respect your listener, your viewer, David, but I do have that experience, and it was a very successful experience. I'm very, very keen to put forward that Liberal Democrat agenda. Just a year ago, for example, Liberal Democrats under my leadership put forward the proposal for a windfall tax on the record unexpected profits of the oil and gas companies, only being made because President Putin is killing innocent Ukrainians. And I made the moral case and the fair case that we should tax those profits so we could provide the money in a responsible way, an affordable way, to cut people's energy bills and to help businesses with their energy costs. That sort of fair approach was also responsible. The problem we saw with Liz Truss's approach was she was borrowing all the money, and that led to people's mortgages going up. So I think the Liberal Democrat plan is a fair plan, and it's a responsible plan. And I think the more people hear that, the more they will move to us. In fact, we're finding lots of lifelong Conservatives switching to the Liberal Democrats because they think the Conservatives have taken them for granted, have lost their way, are out of touch, and they like our fair deal.
But what people need right now, I mean, the key word that we keep seeing on all of our views and emails is stability. People want stability, and often stability comes with experience. And I'm wondering how much Labour and Lib Dems actually do want a general election, actually how much they do want to govern, or how much you just have to say that you'd like to, because the country is in such a difficult, almost impossible situation as it stands. Inflation at 10.1%. As you say, the war in Ukraine Ukraine is waging on. Energy bills, I mean, the government can barely afford that energy deal as much as it is. The housing market on its knees as well. I mean, it's hardly a time when anybody would want to be in power, especially after 12 years for the Labour Party. I mean, is this something you actually want, or is it just lip service?
Well, you're right to say our country is in a mess. I don't think any political party before has made such a mess, and the Conservative parties are totally to blame for this shambles. And, you know, I'm a patriot. I believe in my country. I want to serve my country to help people get out of this mess. And frankly, if the Conservatives were truly patriotic, they would vote for that general election so the British people could have their say. I want to serve our country, as I've done in the past. Liberal Democrats have shown that we can take tough decisions for the interest of people to get the fair deal that people need. You know, I talk to my constituents, and people are going out there, they're working hard, they're running their businesses, looking after their families, they're bringing up the kids, they're caring for their relatives, they're doing the right thing, and all they want government is just to give them a break, give them a fair deal. And the Conservatives have shown they are completely incapable of doing that. And Liberal Democrats have a plan, a costly plan to do that. So that's why I'm keen to have a general election. I think the British people do want their say, and I'm keen to put our case.
Very pleased, Sir Ed, that you came on GB News to put your case. I hope we'll see you again very soon. We may see a lot of you if there is a general election. Thank you very much indeed. Well, I mean, look, what do you think? It's interesting because traditionally the Liberal Democrats have been the home of disaffected Tories. They've found it easier to migrate their vote to the Lib Dems than they have to the Labour Party. Now, is Sir Ed Davey thinking now is the time that actually they could really up their numbers because they've taken a big kicking over recent years? So it could now be the time. What do you think? I'd be interested to know what you think. If you think they're still more aligned to the Labour Party now than you would like, if you're a Tory voter. Interestingly, we were talking about Boris, and loads of you love the idea of Boris coming back. But not all. John in Leicester says Boris did not win an 80-seat majority. Part of that success was people voting against Corbyn, which is true. It's a fair point. Colin says Boris locked us up for 2 years, which helped tank the economy. Richard said he lied about Brexit, he lied about lockdowns. If he's voted in as PM, the Tories will be voted out by the public.
Bill says, I do, however, think a unity candidate for the Tories just isn't possible. There are way too many factions, too much infighting as well. Their best bet for saving themselves is Boris right now. Lots of you thinking that as well. But I think you're definitely onto something there, where there are just so many splits in the Tory party now. I think the Lib Dems will be looking to...
to capitalise on that.
To capitalise on that, exactly, yeah.
Definitely, whether you'd be comfortable, if you're a Tory voter, if you'd be comfortable lending your vote to the Lib Dems, get in touch this morning, GBViews at GB News. Just to finish off on Kevin, who says the media should be ashamed of themselves. We are the laughingstock of the world. I don't know if it's all entirely our fault, Kevin, to be fair.
Well.
I mean, what do you do? We can't ignore what's going on, can we?
But it's been astonishing times, hasn't it? I mean, President Biden wading in, I should say, on Liz Truss's economic policy. I mean, it's just
very strange.
Very strange. But I mean, it's not something we see very often, is it?
No, I'm afraid I've never known anything like it. But we are where we are. How do we make the best of it now? Any thoughts? Get in touch. Don't go anywhere, though. We've got all the papers heading your way in just a minute.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
The keeper in check this morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7:39. Good morning to you. There's been so much, I was going to say doom and gloom. I don't think it's doom and gloom, but it's sort of chaos, if you like, isn't it? Political chaos. So I just wanted to bring you one thing which was nice and pleasant. And it's a message from Steve. Morning, Steve. He says, please can you wish my wonderful wife, Jane, a happy 40th birthday. She absolutely loves GB News. She has a channel on nearly 24 hours a day. Happy birthday, Jane. And let me tell you, at 40, I wish I could remember being that young, Jane. But there you go. Happy birthday,
Jane.
Happy birthday, Jane.
That was worth going off script for. That's nice.
Yes, it was. A bit of nicety this morning.
Anyway, let's get back now. I've got my claws.
All right, David Mellor's got his claws out. Former Chief Secretary of the Treasurer and broadcaster extraordinaire Liz Kershaw, both here to take us through the papers morning once again. David, to the Times and the Boris bandwagon.
Yes, donors in rush to jump on the back of the Boris bandwagon. You see, I think that Boris is in danger of becoming a really big distraction in this election. It was interesting that Michael Howard, my friend Michael Howard, I was in chambers with him, God knows how many years ago, but, you know, he was last, when he was leader of the Conservative Party, they didn't have to bother to have an election. He was sort of elected by acclamation. And it's quite interesting how scathing he is in the papers about the idea of Boris coming back. Boris will not offer the Tories anything that he couldn't have offered if he'd been bothered when he was in. And it was the fact that Boris could not run a tight ship, Boris was a shambles and so on, and that attracted some people that were really not going to be good advertisements for the Conservative Party that led him to be where he is. And I think this picture of Boris in his running gear suggests that he puts it on for the photo opportunity, but not much evidence from the look that he does too much of it in reality. But it's donors in rush to jump on the back Boris bandwagon. That'd be such a mistake for the Conservative Party. And I wonder whether he'll get to the 100, actually, because the 100 is, as one of the papers again points out, the 100 is, because this is the Times on the same page, they say it's above the comfort zone for
And perhaps that's why it's been done intentionally. But, David, wouldn't you say it's what perhaps the people want? I mean, all you have to do is take one look at the newspapers this morning. I mean, Boris Johnson's face is on front of so many of them. One look at our inbox. I mean, it's mainly people saying they want to see Boris Johnson back. I'll just bring you one here from Stephen, who says, Boris was never voted out by the people. It was the Conservatives who got rid of him. And they said the best chance of turning this debacle around is bringing back Boris, and he will make them win again. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't agree with it. And I think where we have... it's quite interesting. See, the people who are activists, and thank God there are activists who will write in like that and fully entitled to his opinion. But when you actually looked at what the opinion polls were saying at the end of Boris's time in office, I mean, the repudiation of Boris
according to the polls, was massive. And I think this idea somehow that the public can't wait to get Boris back is just a naive illusion in my view.
I mean, I know, Liz, that I think you'd quite like to see Boris back, wouldn't you? But let me throw this at you from Trevor in Peterborough.
Oh, hi, Trevor.
Who says, if Boris Johnson returns as Prime Minister, I and millions of others of Tory voters will vote Labour.
Ooh, that's a threat. That's very dangerous. Well,
what's the answer to that? Come on, answer.
Well,
answer.
I think, Trevor, what I have been trying to say today is Boris isn't really intent on coming back. That's the point I was making earlier. He's simply stirring it up.
That's right.
And trying to make sure that there is some democracy introduced into the decision on who is our next Prime Minister. You know, David said earlier there are only 160,000 members of the Conservative Party who choose a leader. That's, 159,350 more than there are MPs, 650 them. So I think it's more democratic that the members choose, not the parliamentary party. But I think in all of this, Boris Johnson, I'm not here as his agent or his cheerleader. I just like to deal in facts. And Boris Johnson became Prime Minister in December 2019. And 3 months later, the world was plunged into a situation absolutely unprecedented, even different from the 1918-19
Are you talking about the COVID?
Yeah.
But you see...
So we weren't the only country to introduce lockdowns. I was talking about this when I've been in Europe this summer with people who experienced it differently. In Spain, it was much harsher. You know, in France, it was much more bureaucratic. You had to fill in 2 sides of A4 to go out and buy a baguette. So we all went through it. But anyway, he had to deal with that, and then immediately on the back... We'll come on to this in a minute.
The deal is, he didn't deal with it, did he? What he did was set up a sort of Chicago-style 1920s speakeasy in the gardens of Number 10 while they were back drinking. Oh, yes, have I referred yet to cheap Spanish wine?
Oh, God, we've had messages.
No, I've had messages saying, Liz, have you found out what label the wine was? Well, no, but I'm guessing it might be.
But the point
Casa de Diablo is my favourite.
You can't have people dying in hospital without their relatives being able to be close to them and see this kind of going on at Number 10. But this was partly because Boris does not have the seriousness of purpose to be able to take the country through that kind of crisis, and he didn't.
I don't give a... I've said it before, and I'm a bit blue in the face about this. I don't give a fig that they had a glass of whatever label wine it was at the end of the day. You know, I must be...
Where you were going with that.
I must be abnormal because I'm very angry about my mum dying in a care home and on her own. But I don't blame it on people who are working hard, out, long hours every day.
Making laws they wouldn't keep themselves.
They weren't going to a pub. They were sitting in the open space, which was part of their working environment. Well, anyway,
this was on the cheap.
Yeah, I think it's a red herring, and I think it was used by the media and other people with a vested interest to unseat a democratically elected Prime Minister. Can I just quickly say, I voted Conservative in 2010 for the first time. What did I get? I got the Liberal Democrats in coalition, and I've got high tuition fees for university, which we were promised wouldn't happen, just as my son was going to university. I voted in 2015 Conservative. David Cameron got in, and then he resigned as soon as it didn't go his way in a referendum. Then I watched as Theresa May was elected, and then I thought, I'm going to pay 25 quid and join the Conservative Party so I can become one of the 200,000 and have a say in who's the Prime Minister. And then I voted for Boris Johnson. He got booted out. Then I voted for Liz Truss. She got booted out. I just feel quite anarchistic about this.
Can I just tell you,
it's democracy.
I think all of the candidates for this election should ring you up and say, please don't back us.
Thanks, David. Yeah. Can I just say that? It's really
you're
sad.
Obviously, Liz bad news for whoever you support.
It was great to be called Elizabeth a couple of months ago. Then the dear Queen died. Now Liz Truss has got kicked out. I'm a bit worried for myself.
This is your last show, Liz. can we have a look at financial chaos in
Yes.
the
Take us around the world, Liz.
Yeah, I tweeted this week just some facts about what's going on in the rest of the world, because what's been missing from the coverage of Liz Truss's short time in office has been the situation globally. And she's been given the boot, and a lot because the people have reported on what she's doing and blamed her for everything without any context, and it's really been annoying me. I think it's insulting to the public that the media don't give us the big picture, and I think it's lazy of people not to seek it out for themselves. If, you know, in France, well, just to stick to the papers for now, Financial Times, which is always it's like, boring, but it's a good barometer of what's going on in the world, because it's money that rules the world. It's not our politicians, it's the bankers and the global corporations. Anyway, Turkey it was said the other day, it's the best place to go for your holidays now, because you'll get a best exchange rate. Turkey's cutting its interest rates. It's going against the flow. Erdogan believes it's best to cut interest rates. The inflation there is 87%, but he's cutting interest rates. He believes he believes in a growth policy. Does this sound familiar? He's seeking to prioritise growth in the run-up to the elections in June. The president believes that low interest rates will play well with small businesses and construction firms, which are his political base and who rely on cheap credit. So that's of interest. Also in the papers today around the world, in the Financial Times, the yen slides to its lowest level since 1990. That's because of what's happening with American
with the dollar
rates. European pension funds are now scrambling around for help from the Central European Bank, because they're facing the same problems with gilts and everything that we did in the UK a couple of weeks ago. And just a couple of other things on this topic, because we don't live in a vacuum. I tweeted some of this the other day, and somebody put, "Oh, that's nothing to do with us. It's in other countries." Oh, get real. So in France, for example, Macron's had to force through his new budget undemocratically because he hasn't got a majority in Parliament, so he just bypassed them. And he's trying to raise the pension age. There's rioting on the streets in Paris. Teachers are on strike. Refineries are on strike, trains are on strike, and some of the things, they've turned off all the hot water in public buildings in France. So you can't, if you go to the lavatory in the Parliament building, you know, they've turned off the Eiffel Tower lights earlier at night. In Germany, crematoria have been asked to turn off, you know, at night, and they say, no, we can't do that. It has to be kept at 800 degrees all the time. There are so many problems around the world, financial, with fuel, social, and none of this has really been reported.
No. Well, no, it does. It all gets bogged down in what's happening over here. Just quickly, David, Fraser Nelson has written a piece in the Telegraph. He thinks that things could all go well for the Tories eventually.
Yes, I mean, the worry is, as I've always said about 1992, that when the Tories lost the confidence of the electorate early on in that Parliament over their ability to handle the economy, they then had nearly 5 years of running the economy well, but it didn't do them any good. They still lost more than half their seats. Fraser Nelson reviews the three most likely outcomes, which would obviously be a return of Boris, which would obviously be Penny Mordaunt, or would obviously be the one that I think he most favours, Rishi Sunak. And basically what he says is all are more viable than Liz Truss's shambolic attempt at the premiership, for which the Conservatives may not quickly be forgiven. But if they get it right this time, then it's possible just to see a Tory route to recovery. I was thinking about that, actually, as I was coming in, and one thing he didn't mention, which he could have done, because, you know, I lived through that 92, 97 Parliament, lost my seat at the end of it. Blair was incredibly popular then. Blair was seen as a man who transcended party politics, and he had charm and all, you know, it didn't last. These things never do. But at that time, he was a man of the moment. The point has to be made that Labour don't have anyone like Blair. And therefore, you know, it's a bit like someone once said about Ronald Reagan. You know, you could walk through his deepest thoughts and not get your feet wet. Well, the same is true of Labour's popularity. It's a mile wide but an inch thick. And there's no evidence that the current Labour leadership have any ability to build the kind of depth of support that Blair had. So just to be a bit optimistic for those remaining Tories who are watching us.
Well, yes, you never know. You never. We should have. We should watch it. We know we're out of time, Liz.
Oh, save it then for cat lovers.
You've got to be thrown out.
Save it for next time.
They've had enough of you, Liz. I'm sorry.
Liz, David, thank you both very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
I just want very quickly take you to Stoke-on-Trent because that's one of those constituencies where, well, there's a lot to play for. Our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, is there for us. The Tories there only have a majority of, what, about 670, Jack, so it's very tight.
It is very tight here in Stoke-on-Trent. It's very cold this morning as well. The MP here, Joe Gideon, won, like you said, by 670 votes here. It was 2019. This has been a very strong Labour area all the time since this seat was created. But it was that 2019 general election, that vote that Boris Johnson promised to get Brexit done, that turned this constituency blue, albeit by that small margin as well. And it's the kind of seat that if the Conservatives want to return another majority at the next election, they've got to keep the support here. I've been speaking to a few people going to work, getting the bus this morning, and the feeling I've got is really frustration, and that they're frustrated that another Prime Minister has resigned, and while they're at home struggling to pay for energy, while they're struggling to pay the increase in food bills, the politicians in Westminster aren't necessarily, they feel, representing them. One voter I spoke to this morning wasn't really energised by the return of Boris Johnson and didn't really feel Rishi Sunak or Penny Mordaunt gave them much more confidence as well. And they admit to me that they had been a long-time Conservative voter and Conservative member as well, but they just don't feel invigorated by the Conservative Party. And that's the issue. The issue necessarily here in places like Stoke-on-Trent Central isn't that necessarily people will switch. It's the fact that Conservative voters just won't come out and vote because they don't feel the party is represented, they don't feel the party is united, and that's the problem that the Conservatives are going to have. And so whatever the next leader is and whoever the next leader is, they've got a lot of work on their hands to try and get voters like here in Stoke-on-Trent Central reinvigorated to come out and vote for them at the next election.
Very good point, Jack. Good to talk to you. Thank you. Catch up with you a little bit later on. And I think that's a good point to get in touch on this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk. If you have been in the last election a Tory voter, what is going to get you out to the polls next time round, if it happens? Because it could happen sooner than later. If you stay at home, well, you may as well hand your vote to a different party. That's how it works out. So what is going to encourage you to get out and vote? Either which way. GBViews, gbnews.uk.
Stay with us, there's lots more to come, including the latest results from our exclusive GB News People's Poll. How did you vote? We'll find out after this.
Good morning, Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A mix of some sunny spells, but plenty of blustery showers today as the winds pick up. But those winds still bringing in mild air, so it's not cold if you're just about to step out the door. There's low pressure moving in, though, from the southwest, bringing bands of showers, some already in across Wales and southwest England. They'll continue to track northwards as we go through the rest of the day. Some heavy ones arriving in Northern Ireland before lunchtime, parts of northwest England and the Midlands too. They are tending to move through because the breeze is picking up. And notice across eastern England, a lot drier compared to yesterday, but even here later on there will be some showers. Staying fairly damp across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere across Scotland, dry and bright until these showers move in through the afternoon, and everywhere it's mild. Temperatures above average by a few degrees. In the south, again 17, 18 perhaps, with a bit of sunshine, 19 Celsius. But if you do get a bit of sunshine, don't expect it to last. More showers moving in through the evening time. They'll be heavy in places. They will still be moving through because it will be quite blustery. And notice too, certainly across England and Wales, through the early hours, the showers tend to fade. So many places here become dry as we head into the weekend. Still pretty mild as well, double digits for many this time tomorrow morning. And actually Saturday will be by and large a fine day for a good part of England and Wales. Some showers in the far northwest of England, chance of 1 or 2 showers across the southeast and later on into the southwest. There will be showers tomorrow across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Won't be quite as windy tomorrow, and it will again be mild. Look at these temperatures, 14, 15 degrees across the north, further south 17, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius, again with light winds. That really won't feel like October. Come Sunday, it stays mild, but the breeze will pick up once more. Yes, there will be some sunshine around, but again, most places are going to see some showers on Sunday too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
The race is on to find a new Prime Minister, the third this year.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Friday the 21st of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, your radio and online, so wherever you are and whatever you're up to this morning, you can take us with you.
Here are your top stories this morning. This time next week, Britain will have a new Prime Minister. Liz Truss will go down in history as Britain's shortest-serving PM. Her government collapsed in the wake of its failed mini-budget last month, and Ms Truss was forced to resign yesterday.
The latest net borrowing figures show government borrowing increased to £20 billion last month. That's up from just over £11 billion before. The ONS says the reading, which excludes state-owned banks, is the second highest September on record, surpassed only during the height of the pandemic.
And we have the latest results from our exclusive GB News People's Poll. We asked if you want Boris back. Find out how you voted.
And we'd love to hear from you on anything we're talking about, but I mean, particularly politics today, because it's all anyone's talking about, understandably so. Loads of different views from you, which is what we like. We will reflect all angles, of course. Join the conversation yourself. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
To our top story now, and Liz Truss has resigned as Prime Minister after only 45 days in office, making her the shortest-serving British Prime Minister in history.
Well, there's now a fast-tracked contest to find the next party leader. That started, and we're likely to see the new Prime Minister, the third, in as many months by the end of the week.
Well, GB News' national reporter Paul Hawkins looks back at Liz Truss's short time as Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
From this,
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
to this. 24 hours is a long time in politics, or at least Liz Truss's political career. Only 45 days ago, the woman who played the role of PM in her school's mock general election achieving her ultimate ambition. But the job would have to wait. The Queen's death meant Liz Truss started her premiership more as a stateswoman than a politician. But politics never went away, and nor did the cost of living crisis. She announced a major package to help with energy bills.
Nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. We will deliver this by securing the wholesale price for energy while putting in place long-term measures to secure future supplies at more affordable rates.
And then days later came that mini budget.
Today, we have cut stamp duty, we have allowed businesses to keep more of their own money to invest, to innovate and to grow. We have cut income tax.
With the PM promising
Growth, growth, and growth.
but the wheels started to fall off.
The pound slumped to a record low against the dollar, plunging towards parity after the government unveiled its plan to cut taxes.
The markets took a dim view of huge, unfunded tax cuts. The pound tanked, but did rebound, and government borrowing costs linked to our mortgage rates continued to rise. Conversely, the economic credibility of the government and the Conservative Party was sliding fast. Labour opened up a huge lead in the polls, and with some pension funds under threat,
The Bank of England has announced it will intervene in markets to avert risk to UK financial stability.
but the bond buying couldn't last.
The Bank of England has confirmed that its emergency bond buying scheme, put in place to stabilise the markets, will close this Friday.
No support for pensions meant the government had to act.
It's being widely reported Kwasi Kwarteng has been sacked as Chancellor.
Sacked in an effort to reassure the markets. His replacement, the man who ran against her to be Conservative Party leader, Jeremy Hunt, ditching almost all her flagship economic policies. The markets responded, with government borrowing costs starting to fall, but so too was her political authority. Everything she said she was going to do, gone. Leading one tabloid to start a race between Liz Truss and a lettuce. Who would last longest?
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
She said in her last PMQs before resigning. But just a few hours later,
Suella Braverman has departed as Home Secretary.
Suella Braverman walking out with shots fired at the PM as she left.
In an openly critical paragraph in her resignation letter, she said about the Prime Minister she had serious concerns about the government's commitment to honouring manifesto commitments, such as reducing overall migration numbers.
There were multiple reports they'd fallen out over migration. The PM wanting more, Braverman wanting less. Alienating her from the right of the party meant losing valuable support for Liz Truss.
Order!
That loss manifesting itself in the behaviour of Conservative MPs on Wednesday evening during a vote of confidence in the government.
I saw members being physically manhandled into another lobby and being bullied.
Backbenchers weren't happy. And on day 45, she threw in the towel.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
In a little over 7 weeks, the UK's shortest-serving PM destroyed the credibility of the world's most successful political party and left the country's economy in an even dire state. The only winner in this sorry saga? That lettuce. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Well, let's talk to John McTernan, former Labour political strategist and advisor, who joins us now. John, good to see you this morning. Look, we know the Labour Party is calling and will continue to call for a general election. When that will happen or not, who knows? But the problem with all of this is that Labour, I mean, as is always the case in opposition, haven't provided us with enough policy detail, have they, to actually offer a viable alternative at the moment?
I think any political party other than the Tory party must be a viable alternative at the moment. This is just a shambles, isn't it? It's the third Prime Minister in as many months. And if it is, as reports are suggesting, the return of Boris Johnson, that will just lead to more splits, more inability on the government side to deliver a programme. And the point about the Labour Party calling for a general election is there will be a full programme, costed programme, put to the people at that time. But we're still in a situation where the public finances are moving, aren't they? We don't even know what the costings of the government programme is at the moment, what the cuts they're proposing, whether they're going to increase benefits. So, if we have an election, it all has to get out there in the open. If we have another Tory Prime Minister, the third, as I said, in 3 months, that is just chaotic.
Chaotic, John, but it's still sort of perfectly constitutional, isn't it? I mean, this is the issue. They were voted in 2019 with a whopping great majority. Now, they might have decided to change leader, but nevertheless, they're still the elected government, and there is no requirement whatsoever for them to call an early election.
No, the constitutional issue is clear, isn't it? It's that you're only Prime Minister of the United Kingdom if you can command the confidence of the House of Commons. It's not your party you have to have the confidence of, it's the House of Commons. And we saw Boris Johnson was thrown out by his own party. We've seen Liz Truss thrown out by her own party. And we know that on planning reform, we know that on benefit increases, we know that on a whole host of big issues that are coming up in the next few weeks and months, that the Tory party are split and divided. That's the problem. The Constitution is really clear. When you can't get your programme through the House of Commons, either somebody else forms a government or you have a general election. And I think we've had this gridlock now, really, for nearly a year. We're coming up next week to the anniversary of the Privileged Committee report on Owen Paterson, which I think was the beginning of the downfall of Boris Johnson when he tried to reverse the punishment for his mate. Imagine if he just decided to let it lie. He might well still be Prime Minister. And that's the thing. The Commons decides who the Prime Minister is, not the Tory party or the Labour Party.
Well, but if you're going to take that line, John, then there's a very clear answer for Keir Starmer, isn't there? And Sir Ed Davey and Ian Blackford and all the rest of them to stop sort of bleating on about a general election and when you get an opportunity, bring in a vote of no confidence in the government. Now, if you could get that through with the help of Tory backbenchers who you say are so disillusioned, you could actually win that, couldn't you?
Well, I mean, that was what Wednesday was all about, wasn't it? We had a vote brought on by the Labour Party, which first the Tory party said, number 10 said was a vote of confidence. Then when they thought they were going to lose it, they said it wasn't a vote of confidence. Then the Chief Whip and the Deputy Chief Whip resigned because they'd been undermined by number 10. Then finally at 1:30 in the morning, number 10 decided to issue a WhatsApp clarification to journalists saying, no, after all, it was a vote of confidence, presumably because they'd won it, and presumably because that allowed the Chief Whip and the Deputy Chief Whip to unresign. That's the kind of chaos, really, isn't it? That soap opera is not about a stable government, which is what we need at the moment with, the war in Ukraine, with the energy price challenge, the inflation, pressuring all houses and households and businesses. And I think that's the real thing. That Labour did create a vote of no confidence, and the government were so scared at a certain point they said it wasn't, and then they said it was. And I think it's that sense. You look at our country from outside. What are other governments thinking? What are institutional investors thinking? It's stability that's required, and nobody can say that stability is being provided by having 3 prime ministers in 3 months.
Well, John, as you say, I mean, stability is required, but Labour, for the last 12 years at least, have had no experience in leadership, have had no experience in government. And many people would say that the state that the country's in right now, I mean, inflation at 10.1%, the war in Ukraine, a housing market on its knees. I mean, energy bills going up all the time, and we now know that that's not going to last. The help for that, and at least, isn't going to last much longer than 6 months. I mean, it's a really difficult time for any party, let alone one that doesn't have experience in leadership. Do Labour actually want to win this election if it goes to a general election? And if they do, isn't it just a poisoned chalice?
Oh, look, I've heard that argument before. There's never a good time to lose an election. It's always the right time to be in government because you are making the decisions. You're making the big calls. It's extraordinary, isn't it, to think that the last 45 days have made the economic situation for ordinary households, for ordinary businesses across the country much worse than they would have been in these challenging circumstances. That Britain's reputation has been undermined. Budget restoration, consolidation, rebuilding is going to take longer now, but I think it requires the change, the change of government that the country clearly want. We've had this morning. I saw a poll. It's the 35th poll in a row which has Labour on 45% or higher. Labour's been in the lead for 250 polls in a row. The Tories can decide that what they want to do is just keep changing their own leadership. The country has got a settled will, and if they want a Labour government, they should have a Labour government. And yeah, we have been out since 2010. That's the nature of the British system for the last 60 or 70 years. When you're out for 3 or 4 cycles, which means that you have a new team which are not as experienced, although some have been in ministers before, but you do have a fresh attitude, a fresh view and fresh energy. And I think, honestly, that's what the country needs. It needs freshness, fresh eyes, and the energy of a Labour government that clearly, under Keir Starmer, showed at its party conference, singing "God Save the King," with the British flag, the Union flag, behind the speakers every day. That Labour wants to be in government. Labour's tired of being in opposition. I think the country are tired of this Tory government. I suspect most Tory MPs are tired of being in government now.
Well, John, I'm going to put you on the spot, Mystic McTurnan, if you will. Who should win the Tory leadership contest? Who should be in that final 2 on Monday, and who should go on to win?
So if I wanted the best thing to happen for the Tory party, I think Penny Mordaunt is probably the best compromise candidate because she's got character, she's got vim, vigour. We saw her this week, Wednesday, taking the question on behalf of the Prime Minister. She's got some panache. The reality, I suspect, Boris Johnson's on his way back. There's nothing like, is there? There's nothing like the redemption narrative. He fell hard. He rose high. He fell hard. He's coming back again. And I think it's irresistible in a way, and you can see it with a number of MPs overnight who've been saying that they back Boris. It's unfinished business, isn't it? He's feeling he's got unfinished business in number 10. I think it would be a disastrous choice for the Tory party. It would just remind the country why they fell out of love with Boris. Of course, he's a great character. Of course, he's charismatic, and that will probably take him to the Tory leadership. But it's the wrong choice. They need somebody stable at the centre of the party to unite the party, to take them on the next few months and maybe the next couple of years. And they've got to hand over the country to the incoming Labour government. There isn't any route that takes them back to a 5th election victory. All there is salvaging their reputation.
OK, John McTiernan, good to get your perspective. Thank you very much indeed. Do you agree with what John's saying? Let us know, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. But in the meantime, at 8:16, let's just bring you up to date with some of the other headlines.
The US says that Iranian military trainers were in Crimea as they help Russian forces operate Iranian-made drones to attack targets in Ukraine. That's despite Iran and Russia both denying the allegations. Thursday saw day 1 of forced power cuts in Ukraine since the war began in order for repairs to be made to damaged energy plants.
The actor Kevin Spacey has won the civil sex abuse claim brought against him. Jurors found that the Star Trek actor Anthony Rapp couldn't prove his claim that the House of Cards star had made sexual advances towards him when he was 14. Mr. Spacey, throughout, denied any misconduct.
A hospitals regulator has said maternity services in England are the worst they've ever been, with 2 in 5 units ranked as inadequate. The Care Quality Commission says it has deep concerns about the level that care is given to mothers and babies, with systematic issues within NHS leadership and culture. Its report calls maternity unit issues a national challenge.
A think tank has warned that household food bills have gone up by £11.4 billion this year. That's, on average, £407 a year for most families, or £34 a month. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit has found combined impacts of climate and oil and gas prices have driven up the costs.
The time has just gone 17 minutes past 8, and now it's time for the People's Poll.
Well, in this week's poll, we asked who you would vote for if a general election was called.
And of the people polled, we found that 53% of voters would favour a Labour leadership as opposed to 14% for the Tories.
We also asked who 2019 Conservative voters would prefer as the next Prime Minister. Boris Johnson led the polls with 38%. Rishi Sunak came in second with 20%.
And finally, we found the word shambles is what comes to mind when people hear of the Conservative Party.
Well, let's talk to Professor of Politics Matt Goodwin, who's here in the studio. Matt, morning to you. Look, this is very interesting, isn't it? In the sense that, let's look at Boris first and foremost. In terms of those who voted Tory in 2019, it's interesting that Boris is still the big appeal for them. Now, that then obviously plays into what we're going to see this coming week.
Well, he is. He's still got some star power among those 2019 Conservatives. And if you look at where the Conservative Party is today, what it really needs to do more than anything is try and put back together, like Humpty Dumpty, that coalition that it won in 2019 that allowed it to dismantle the Red Wall. And when you ask those 2019 Conservatives who they want to see, I mean, it's not even close. Boris Johnson is nearly 20 points ahead of Rishi Sunak, who's in second, Penny Mordaunt a distant third. Now, when you ask all voters in the country, Rishi Sunak has a slight lead, a 2-3 point lead. But among those Conservatives, Boris Johnson is ahead.
We were just speaking to our newspaper reviewer, David Mellor, who was saying that, you know, we don't have a presidential system. It is down to the party. It's the party that is voted for, not the person. But these results here would indicate that a lot is the personality of Boris Johnson. That is what makes him a winner. And that's why, according to these results, people want to see him back.
I think some people want to see him back. I've been talking to MPs much of this week. What they are deeply alarmed about is just how low the Conservative vote is falling. I can't begin to explain how disastrous this is for the Conservative Party. On 14% of the vote, it is the lowest share of the vote for the Conservative Party in British polling history. We've never seen anything like this before. It's an extinction-level event if this happens at a general election. So the party is facing the most important decision, really, that it's faced for a very long time. Who's going to pick up the reins and try and put this back together? And that's why many MPs, particularly in the Red Wall, other areas, are saying, look, they accept that a large part of the country don't really like Boris Johnson and they see him as quite a toxic personality. But there is another view within the party that says, well, if they're going to potentially lose the next election anyway, why not try and minimise some of those losses? Why not try and at least keep some of those seats that Boris Johnson, in their eyes, won for them in 2019?
Yeah, so it's a mitigation exercise in all of it, which is interesting. I was saying to one of our guests earlier on, it depends how the Tory party, and particularly the MPs at the moment, want to view this. You know, whether it's saving their own hides when it comes to a general election, which will happen, you know, in 2 years, if not a long time before, or whether they want to work in the national interest, which is what some would argue Rishi Sunak is more capable of doing.
Well, there's also another view, Stephen, which is that actually, if you just look at policy for a minute, that 2019 manifesto feels a long time ago, before COVID, before the war in Ukraine, before Partygate. But just look at what's in that manifesto. It's a popular manifesto, levelling up the country, sending power outside of London and the South East, lowering migration, leaving the European Union, taking control of Britain's borders, investing in the National Health Service. Many MPs will say that manifesto is fine. You don't need to change it. That was an election-winning manifesto. And the person who is closest to that manifesto is Boris Johnson. Where I think they get a bit nervous about some of the other candidates is they're not sure exactly where they want to take the country or what they want to do with the country. And especially among those Red Wall MPs, to be frank, there is a concern among both in terms of both Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt as to whether they would hold those new Conservative seats. And that's certainly what I've been hearing in Westminster.
But with that manifesto, we tagged it, everybody tagged it, the Brexit election.
Right.
Right? Now, Brexit, some people get in touch and say, well, he hasn't delivered properly on Brexit. But Brexit is fundamentally done. We've got to finish off the edges, if you like. But we are out now. So the meat of that manifesto has gone, has it, in what people were actually voting for?
I think it depends how you see Brexit. I think there are a lot of people in the country who see Brexit not just about exiting the European Union, but they see it about being a fundamental new national project, sending power to other parts of the country, lowering levels of migration, taking control of borders by leaving some of the European courts, etc., etc. So there are people who say Brexit wasn't just a process. Brexit was about building a different type of Britain. And so I wouldn't dwell too much on the fact that we've left the European Union and therefore that manifesto is over. I think there's lots of things in that manifesto people still really like. They're just incredibly frustrated. And I think they're frustrated about both left and right, Stephen, actually. In the polls, the other thing we find is, remember this, only half of the country are backing Labour or the Conservatives. There's another half. There are a sea of voters who are looking at politics and just feeling disillusioned, disgruntled, fed up. They say, actually, neither of these parties represent my values or speak for people like me.
And Matt, I did want to ask you about the topic of disillusion. With that final finding from this, the word shambles is what comes to mind when people hear of the Conservative Party. Do you think for many people it is simply they've seen too much, it's a mess, it's chaos, it's a shambles, and they won't be turning out if there's a general election?
I think apathy could be the big winner. Disengagement from politics, absolutely. Look, the Conservative Party is one of the most successful political parties in the history of the Western world, but it's on life support. It is in intensive care. And whoever wins this leadership election, I think, will either determine whether we can flick the switch and the party can get out of bed and start to, recover, or whether actually the Conservative Party is not going to be coming back into frontline British politics for a long period of time. And it's difficult. I can't overstate just how fragile the party is as we sit here today. I've never seen numbers like this in my lifetime in the polls.
OK. Matt, good to see you, as always. Thanks very much indeed. Let us know what you think. Of course, it's all about you. gbviews@gbnews.uk. What do you make of it all? What those poll numbers, as Matt was saying, are absolutely shocking.
They really, really are. Let us know what you think about that. There's lots more to come, but first, let's get the weather for you.
Good morning, Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A mix of some sunny spells, but plenty of blustery showers today as the winds pick up. But those winds still bringing in mild air, so it's not cold if you're just about to step out the door. There's low pressure moving in, though, from the southwest, bringing bands of showers, some already in across Wales and southwest England. They'll continue to track northwards as we go through the rest of the day. Some heavy ones arriving in Northern Ireland before lunchtime, parts of northwest England and the Midlands too. They are tending to move through because the breeze is picking up. And notice across eastern England, a lot drier compared to yesterday, but even here later on there will be some showers. Staying fairly damp across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere across Scotland, dry and bright until these showers move in through the afternoon. And everywhere it's mild. Temperatures above average by a few degrees. In the south, again, 17, 18 perhaps, with a bit of sunshine, 19 Celsius. But if you do get a bit of sunshine, don't expect it to last. More showers moving in through the evening time. They'll be heavy in places. They will still be moving through because it will be quite blustery. And notice too, certainly across England and Wales through the early hours, the showers tend to fade. So many places here become dry as we head into the weekend. Still pretty mild as well, double digits for many this time tomorrow morning. And actually Saturday will be by and large a fine day for a good part of England and Wales. Some showers in the far northwest of England, chance of 1 or 2 showers across the southeast and later on into the southwest. There will be showers tomorrow across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Won't be quite as windy tomorrow, and it will again be mild. Look at these temperatures: 14, 15 degrees across the north, further south 17, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius, again with light winds. That really won't feel like October. Come Sunday, it stays mild, but the breeze will pick up once more. Yes, there will be some sunshine around, but again, most places are going to see some showers on Sunday too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. It is 8:29.
Now, a neonatal nurse has been accused of killing 7 babies and attempting to murder 10 others at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2015 and 2016.
Well, the trial is, of course, now in its second week at Manchester Crown Court.
Well, for more, let's speak to GB News' now North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper. Good morning to you, Sophie. You've been covering this case since the beginning. What's the latest?
Yes, good morning to you both. Well, court isn't scheduled to start till around 10:30 this morning, but I'll just give you an update on what's been happening in the Lucy Letby trial here at Manchester Crown Court so far this week. Now, as you said, Lucy Letby has been charged with the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of a further 10 babies while she was working on the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. She denies all of the charges against her. Now, primarily this week, the focus has been on child A and child B. Now, the prosecution alleges that Lucy Letby murdered child A with an injection of air into his bloodstream. They also suggest that she attempted to murder child B, which is child A's twin sister, via the same method. Now, yesterday, the court heard from Dr. David Harkness, who was working as a registrar at the Countess of Chester Hospital during the timeframe of Lucy Letby's alleged attacks. Now, the jury was shown the notes that Dr. Harkness had written in retrospect on the night that child A died. He told the court that child A was a completely stable, well baby, and that what happened that night was incredibly unexpected. He also told the court about discoloured patches on child A's skin, which he said he had never seen before. The court also heard from Melanie Taylor yesterday, who was a nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital back in 2015. She was working alongside Lucy Letby on the night that child A died. When she was asked, she told the court that there were a lot of people involved when child A's health began to decline, and that it's really quite difficult to recall details in that kind of situation. She describes the night as a blur. Now, this morning we're expecting to hear from even more witnesses who will give evidence in this case, initially through the prosecution and then to be cross-examined by the defence.
OK, look, Sophie, for now, thank you very much indeed. I know Sophie's going to keep us up to date with the trial as and when we get more details presented to court on that one. We've got more to come for you, though, in just a moment, including Liz Kershaw and David Mellor with your morning papers.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
.34, morning to you, Stephen and Ellie with you today on your TV, your radio and online. And honestly, I can't tell you how many emails and things we've had.
We're inundated.
Absolutely inundated. Loads of people getting in touch. Billy Stoke-on-Trent says, I'd like Boris back. I voted for him in 2019. I'd do it again. Michael says, if Boris wins, I would vote for him in the next election. If he does not win, I won't bother to vote again.
Carol says, I joined the Tory party to put Boris in power. He's the only MP that should be PM. He's the only one I would vote for, and I'm far from alone. Millions feel the same way.
Simon, though, Stansted says, we must realise we are part of a game. Boris pulled out of the race with May, surprisingly, but then she resigned and he got in. Bernie says Boris is not a viable option as he wouldn't get a majority in the House. Philip says the only politician from the two main parties that's reflected the majority of the country's feelings on immigration and law and order was Suella Braverman. But of course, she went because she broke some rules, which security rules. I mean, doesn't that raise a big question? Plus, of course, she didn't really need to resign on that. She could have issued an apology. Right. So she made a point at resigning, doesn't she?
But she may be in a cabinet now because she's the darling of the right of the party, isn't she? And if they're looking for that unity cabinet, maybe she needs to be there. Do let us know what you think. Yeah. And one last one, should we do? Oh. Angela in the East Midlands says, I'm a lifelong Conservative voter, she says, but never again. They're a complete and utter disgrace, and I can't even class the party as Conservative anymore. Says Angela. Do you want one more then?
I was just going to say Richard in Cumbria. Morning, Richard. Says, I think the Labour politician, well, he wasn't a politician, advisor that John McTiernan, who we had earlier, got it spot on. The Owen Paterson affair was the very start of the Boris demise. He might have just still been the leader if it wasn't for that. Keep your thoughts coming through, GB Views at gbnews.uk. We'll get the views now, not of you, but of our two esteemed guests, Liz Kershaw and David Mellor. Good morning, you two. Liz, let's look at the Times, should we? What is the world making of where we are?
World watches on with horror, anger, mirth and schadenfreude.
And contempt.
Schadenfreude?
Yeah, so let's go with Germany.
Who's he? He plays centre forward.
Mönchengladbach.
Dortmund, yes.
Yeah, Germany first then. The press, to the news that Liz Truss had gone.
Yeah.
Because it is important how the world sees us, obviously.
Oh,
yeah. A lot of it is about image and confidence. So in Germany, the press initially reacted with the air of zoo visitors watching a hungry polar bear on the loose, torn between concern, horrified fascination and relief at being on the safe side of the barrier. The chaos in Britain has reached perfection, proclaimed the Frankfurter Rundschau newspaper. Right, well, that's them. France, speaking before an EU summit in Brussels, Macron said, I hope that Great Britain can return to stability as quickly as possible. It's good for us, it's good for Europe. Anyway, another commentator, Marion von Rentenbergen, said, the UK has gone completely mad and is an incredible mess. And Macron also said Boris Johnson alone has popular legitimacy. Sorry, it wasn't him, it was Alexandra De Vecchio. Right, the United States, President Biden says he'll continue to work with us together to meet the global challenges our nation faces. China was wary of Liz Truss's hardline approach during her campaign and in her election, and said she was hyping the China threat. Irresponsible.
China doesn't like a hardline approach.
And I wonder if China at all interfered in things, you know, with bots, etc.
Interesting, the Ukraine's tweeted, haven't you found that this morning? So the official Ukrainian Twitter account tweeted.
Put a picture of Boris Johnson up saying he's the man. But we know that, don't we? We know that he's very popular in Ukraine. That shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. Yes, it's Ukraine government organisation Better Call Boris. They've tweeted this morning.
Well, just finally, Italy has had nearly 70 governments since the Second World War. And they were very angry that it was said by commentators that Britain was becoming like Italy. They're saying that Italy's, you know, far more successful at the moment.
There is a very funny little clip doing the rounds on Twitter, actually, if you can be bothered to look for it, which is a German news reporter reporting on all this stuff in German. But she then decides. Then decides to read a tweet from one of the MPs who's we couldn't possibly play you because it's full of expletives, and she just sort of reads it out in English. Absolutely. You couldn't do that on British television, let me tell you.
It's a bit like the fast show, Scotchio, Gutus, but so she's just, as you say, rattling it off in German, and then she comes out with the most foul expletives.
It's extraordinary.
Everybody's been swearing this week, though, haven't they? Very quickly. Yeah. I mean, Jeremy Hunt's name has been missaid many times, and people have used the F word. And Savage Javid was described as, you know, SH1T. Everybody's been really potty-mouthed, but not us here on GB News.
We don't agree with that, no.
But the satisfaction I think this is giving, we cannot deplore the satisfaction this is giving our friends overseas, which reminds me of so many... I might not be all that keen on the Chinese, but I always have wonderful proverbs for all these things. And one of them is, there's no sight so satisfactory as watching a friend fall off the top of a high building.
Oh, that's very dark, isn't it?
It is a bit dark.
But I mean, that's what they're doing here.
Yeah.
And, you know, and although, you know, look, I'm embarrassed and not a little bit ashamed of the way things are in this country, but I'd much rather live in Britain than in Germany, where they can't even elect a government that has the consistency of purpose to be able to support, for instance, the Ukraine, and where, you know, I mean, Germany, having had its adventurous time in foreign policy and doing terrible things, They've now gone entirely the other way and have no real convictions whatsoever and no ability to be useful at a time of desperate worry for Europe. And the Germans can laugh all they like, but we are still a better place.
Well, speaking of Germany, I mean, the French and the Germans are falling out currently. Lots of arguing in Europe over how to deal with gas prices. And Germans trying to go their own way, and Macron saying, no, we must have a EU-wide policy. Well, let's see how that works.
I think it is significant how this is going to go reputationally for us. I mean, I was listening to a Greek politician this morning who was saying he'd always admired the UK for our stable economy and our stable politicians, and they feel in Greece as though their economy could crash any moment, and they'd always admired us for that. And then look at what happened just a few weeks ago.
I always drive
and the fact we're having to pay higher rates for our borrowing than they are in Greece is a sign. But, you know, these things pass. The only question is how quickly.
Well, talking of what the Chinese have accused Liz Truss of, David, in the Times, they're quoting a US admiral saying President Xi could invade Taiwan this year. Well, do they mean this year or 2023? I don't know, but I mean, it's...
Well, I find this quite worrying because, you see, the situation that we've got here is that Russia is taking up all our thoughts. Now, I don't say Russia isn't dangerous, particularly when run by Putin, but Russia is a state in serious decline, whereas China is a state in the ascendancy. Xi has just been effectively re-elected for life. He'll soon be Chairman Xi, just like Chairman Mao. And one of the things that he has pledged to do is to take back Taiwan. Now, you know, that's... First of all, Taiwan has the same capability as Ukraine to fight back. But also, how easy would it be, certainly for the Americans, who've already given guarantees to Taiwan, to sit back? And it's a very unstable and worrying world, actually. And one or two people, I think, misunderstood what I said the other day. But I'm sadly old enough to been the minister at the Foreign Office responsible for Eastern Europe before the fall of the Berlin Wall. And the old geriatrics who, before the final attempt to fix Russia, ran the Soviet Union. They were pretty horrifying, but they never did anything much because they were, it was a game for them, and everybody knew the rules of the game. Now we don't know the rules of the game. God knows what's going to happen.
And why does China want Taiwan? Because Taiwan produces something like 2/3 of the world's microchips.
Exactly.
So they get that, and they control all our car production, iPhones, laptops.
And it's so unnecessary for China, but it appears with a lot of these people, Putin, President Xi, I mean, these people, it's never enough what they've got because they think it proves their virility to have more. I mean, all this nonsense with Putin started because he believes that the Soviet Empire is sacred. A brief empire over the whole of Eastern Europe that was never sustainable. He now thinks that's where Russia ought to be. I mean, it's awful.
He's also got short man syndrome, I think. It's very small.
Well, I don't know if that's a fair point. I don't know.
What was it they used to say on one of those comedy programmes? Small but perfectly marked.
Liz, have a look at the Times. This really shocking story about maternity wards in the UK. More than half of them have been judged unsafe.
Yeah, well, this is coincidental with the case of the Chester nurse who's charged and on trial currently for murdering babies in her care. I mean, everybody's shocked about it, but, we
have to watch commenting on that while it's sub judice.
Yeah, she's charged,
Well, she's been on trial,
Yeah, anyway, coincidentally, this report's come out, more than half of maternity units are now judged unsafe. For the first time since records began, half of the 139 maternity units run by the NHS are now classed as inadequate or requiring improvement. Across the health service, the CQC, Quality Commission, warned that the risk of patients coming to harm is now seen as the new status quo. Its report adds that the inability of patients to access GP services is exacerbating the high pressures on care services. I mean, it's just frightening. Aren't you frightened to be ill? But I'd be so frightened. This is, to me, this this would be the best contraceptive to me if I was still fecund. But I remember going to the hospital for the first time when I was pregnant. What are you laughing at? It's a very nice word. Anyway, I was so horrified by the treatment I got in the hands of the NHS antenatal services that I thought, right, well, I've got money in the bank. Rather than go on a fancy holiday, I'm going to spend it on a private hospital. Because this should be a happy occasion.
And how did that work?
That was absolutely fantastic. And then the next time, I'd moved out to London and I thought, surely the hospitals outside of London will be, you know, more modern. This was Milton Keynes. So I entrusted myself to the NHS. Horrific. Absolutely horrific. Scary. Terrifying. We were neglected. I got an infection. It was just horrendous. And I concluded then, and I'm sure there's some very devoted midwives out there, I'm sure there are, but the management and the organisation, but the attitude is the thing. Now, what I found was, in the private sector, of course, you're paying. You're treated like a customer. You're given a wonderful experience. In the NHS, I found you were treated like, well, it's your fault, it's self-inflicted. You've got yourself in this mess. This is free, take it or leave it. And that was my experience 30 years ago. So I'm not surprised by this report.
I mean, politically, the worry is that the NHS has become like a religion. It can do no wrong, and they're all angels, and they're all this, and they're all that. Wonderful work is done in the NHS, and my sister had a great career, ended up as the nursing director of the Christie Hospital in Manchester.
Which is a wonderful hospital.
It is. And, you know, so I'm not against the NHS, not at all. But I do feel worshipping the NHS because the essence of a religion is blind faith. And we can't have blind faith in a service that is as flawed as this one is.
Talking about having faith, David, The Crown.
Oh, yes.
The Crown.
This is a favourite obsession of mine.
They've finally admitted, have they, or are going to sort of properly admit that it is fiction?
Yes, and you know, the interesting thing is about that, I'm just looking at the Daily Mail, it's page 26. Ever heard of Richard III?
Yes.
Indeed.
Not regarded as a great guy, right? A villain, right? There's no evidence he was a villain. However, a gentleman by the name of Shakespeare, we've all heard of him, right?
Yeah.
He decided to write a work of fiction about Richard III, and so for hundreds of years, Richard III has been damned, not because of what he did, but because of what Shakespeare said he did. I think that's relevant to this. Because, you know, I mean, well, I tell you who's done a wonderful job with all that, she's quoted, is Dame Judi Dench. She's a wonderful woman, actually. And she accused the show, this is quoting from the Mail, of being cruelly unjust and backed calls for a disclaimer. They want people, although they claim they don't, they want people to believe what is said is true. The problem with The Crown is, of course, that the production standards are so high, it could be. But the reality is, you know, this business about Prince Charles, at a time when his marriage to Diana was imploding, so there was no way he would have done this, goes to John Major and says, you know, Mum's a bit of a nuisance, she's 65, let's get rid of her. I mean, this is rubbish.
Yeah.
But you're sitting in America or wherever, and do you think it's rubbish? There'll be plenty of people maybe sitting in parts of the UK. They believe what they see on the telly.
Yeah.
It's quite worrying, that.
It is worrying. I think it's right. There's something needs to be done. I've always said I find it very worrying when they make dramas about stuff which is ongoing now.
Yes.
How on earth do you believe? Can you do Let Us Rejoice in 15 seconds, Liz? This is the Daily Star.
Oh, I don't really want to give it the oxygen of life, the lettuce, all publicity. Anyway, this lettuce has lasted longer that they pitted it against Liz Truss, allegedly. The lettuce has been put in the fridge every night. Liz Truss wasn't. And also, if you strip lettuce down, you know, and you have it all washed and mixed and in salad, in bags, a salad, then they pump it with carbon monoxide, nitrogen. So, you know, it's got some noxious substance to thrive on. I think Liz Truss has had plenty poison, and that's the end of my metaphor.
OK.
Can I just say that OK, Larry the cat. I was on to get a cat in.
No, you're over. You're done.
Poor Larry the cat's
but you're finished. You've had your moment.
I mean, honestly, 15 seconds you give her, and what does she take? That is it from you two for this morning. David, Liz, thank you both very much indeed. And I'll see you a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Yeah, when we go home together.
Got to give her a lift home after all this. Do you want to lift anywhere, David?
Yeah.
He's doing a carpool.
I think I fancy going down to Monte Carlo for the weekend.
Oh,
Can
do
give me
you?
a lift down there?
Well, I would do, but they only serve cheap Spanish wine, David. So,
Go join Anne in Malta.
now, look, we've been talking, of course, about the Prime Minister resigning as leader of the Conservative Party yesterday. But who's walking? Someone's yelling in my ear now. But what does her constituency make of all of this?
Well, let's talk now to our national reporter, Theo Chikumba, who is in Norfolk for us this morning. Theo, what are people thinking there?
Well, good morning to both of you. At the moment, haven't heard from anyone yet, but we will bring you some voices later in the day. But this is Liz Truss's constituency. She's been an MP here since 2010. It's been a strong seat for the Conservative Party since 1964. Here in Thetford, in southwest Norfolk, there's a population of around 25,000. And when we were here before, people at the time, about a month ago, were talking about the support they want for their businesses, people's pockets, also being questions, people saying, you know, we want more to be able to do with our money. But today I'm going to be trying to gauge the mood here away from Westminster, but here in the constituency. So, yeah, it's been a challenging few weeks and days. Of course, we've seen the Chancellor no longer in his role and the Home Secretary as well. And this morning we've been hearing some of the names bubbling up to see who's going to be the next Prime Minister come next week, Friday. But today, I'm going to be getting the mood here in Thetford in southwest Norfolk, which is the constituency, as I mentioned, where Liz Truss has been MP since 2010.
OK. Theo, thanks very much indeed. So many of you getting in touch this morning. Anne says, I honestly believe that all the people calling for a general election do not have the country's best interests at heart. It would probably take 3 months away from running the country. 3 months when the world is in crisis. They're just self-serving, to be honest. Bring back Boris. He's our only hope.
Yep, lots of you getting in touch on the Tory leadership contest. Keith says, after 44 days of complete incompetence, Miss Truss is now entitled to £115,000 a year for life as an ex-PM. What an absolute disgrace. And we should just say, at this point, it works more like expenses, doesn't it? So if she incurs expenses and she has to be able to prove that expenditure, then she can get that money back.
Yeah, she was up to 100.
Up to 100.
It's not like a paycheck.
Yeah, imagine if she did. 44 days, well, that'd be all right, wouldn't it?
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, I'd do it.
I mean, worth retiring on.
Yeah.
Chris says, this is about Boris, quite right, we voted him in, and what a cheek, the party voted him out, and look what's happened. Boris will get votes, people won't go to Labour. But David says, which is interesting off what Matt Goodwin was saying earlier on, saying, well, 50% of people say they won't vote for Labour or the Tory party. He says we need a new political party to vote for. The ones we have to choose from are all tainted.
And lots of people, I think, are thinking the same way, aren't they? I mean, apathy is going to be a big thing if we go to the general election. Will people actually turn out to vote? Do let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Lots to come after this weather update for you.
Good morning, Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A mix of Some sunny spells, but plenty of blustery showers today as the winds pick up. But those winds still bringing in mild air, so it's not cold if you're just about to step out the door. There's low pressure moving in, though, from the southwest, bringing bands of showers, some already in across Wales and southwest England. They'll continue to track northwards as we go through the rest of the day. Some heavy ones arriving in Northern Ireland before lunchtime, parts of northwest England and the Midlands too. They are tending to move through because the breeze is picking up. And notice across eastern England, a lot drier compared to yesterday, but even here later on there will be some showers. Staying fairly damp across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere across Scotland, dry and bright until these showers move in through the afternoon, and everywhere it's mild. Temperatures above average by a few degrees. In the south, again 17, 18 perhaps, with a bit of sunshine, 19 Celsius. But if you do get a bit of sunshine, don't expect it to last. More showers moving in through the evening time. They'll be heavy in places. They will still be moving through because it will be quite blustery. And notice too, certainly across England and Wales through the early hours, the showers tend to fade. So many places here become dry as we head into the weekend. Still pretty mild as well, double digits for many this time tomorrow morning. And actually Saturday will be by and large a fine day for a good part of England and Wales. Some showers in the far northwest of England, chance of 1 or 2 showers across the southeast and later on into the southwest. There will be showers tomorrow across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Won't be quite as windy tomorrow, and it will again be mild. Look at these temperatures, 14, 15 degrees across the north, further south 17, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius, again with light winds. That really won't feel like October. Come Sunday, it stays mild, but the breeze will pick up once more. Yes, there will be some sunshine around, but again, most places are going to see some showers on Sunday too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
The race is on to find a new Prime Minister, the third this year.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock. It's Friday, the 21st of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We're live across the whole of the UK, on your TV, on your radio and online, so wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, this time next week, Britain should have a new Prime Minister. Liz Truss will go down in history as Britain's shortest-serving PM. Her government collapsed in the wake of its failed mini-budget last month. and Ms Truss was forced to resign yesterday.
The latest net borrowing figures shows government borrowing increased to £20 billion last month. The ONS says the reading, which excludes state-owned banks, is the second highest September on record, surpassed only during the height of the COVID pandemic.
And we'll bring you the latest results from our exclusive GB News People's Poll. We asked if you want Boris back. Find out how you voted.
And as ever, I'm reading them now. You can get in touch with your views. Keep on emailing gbnews@gbnews.uk.
Well, our main news this morning is what you've all been emailing in about, actually, today. More than 1,000 of you getting in touch. Thank you so much. We love to hear from you. We'll get through as many of them as we can.
Yes.
But, of course, the main news is that since Liz Truss has resigned as Prime Minister after only 45 days, it does now make her the shortest-serving British Prime Minister in history. So what happens next?
Well, there's a fast-track contest to find the next party leader, and that's already started. And we're likely to see the new Prime Minister, the third in as many months, by the end of next week, and perhaps before.
Yeah, well, yes, could all happen before. Could be a coronation, if you like, Monday onwards. Who knows? Let's talk to our political reporter, Olivia Utley, who's with us in the studio. Morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, we don't quite know, do we? We're talking next Friday at the latest, so we're told. So it all depends on what we see on Monday morning.
We are, and it does. What happens is that MPs put their nominations forward, and if at any point any of the candidates get over 100 nominations, if only one of them gets over 100 nominations, then they become Prime Minister automatically on that day. Liz Truss won't even stay on until Friday. So, as you say, it could happen any day of next week. And some people are saying that there are already 150 MPs ready to back Rishi Sunak, which could mean if the rest of the vote is split between Penny Mordaunt, Boris Johnson and, say, one other candidate, Kemi Badenoch-Braverman, that could mean that Rishi Sunak's elected far sooner than we're expecting.
And the biggest question isn't just who could take over, it's who out of those candidates, the ones that you suggest, who can command a reliable vote in the Commons. Can they do that?
Yes, well, I think what's very difficult. I mean, the new Prime Minister is going to be hamstrung from the word go. They're due to be elected on Friday at the latest, as we said. And the budget, which Jeremy Hunt has outlined, is due to come in on Monday. That gives the new Prime Minister very, very little time. Will they decide to delay that budget? That might make some sense, because although Jeremy Hunt is often called a sort of steady hand on the tiller and has a sort of air of a safe pair of hands about him. His budget, many may think it's very sensible, but it's going to be very, very radical. It's talked about as the biggest budget since 1970, 1.4 billion in taxes or spending cuts are going to be announced, it's expected, in this budget. So the Prime Minister is going to have a huge decision on his or her hands of whether to go ahead with that budget on the 31st or whether to delay it for a while. And either way, as you say, Ellie, there's going to be difficulties in getting their MPs over the line.
Yeah, because it is all about that level of unity now moving forward. Do you think because they are in such dire straits, if they don't unify, their turkey's voting for Christmas?
Oh,
aren't they? Are they aware of that?
I think they are aware of that. From what I've heard from Conservative MPs, they are very much now in sort of survival instinct. And I think that's why we're seeing talk of Boris Johnson being hammed up, because there are plenty of Conservative MPs who don't like Boris Johnson, don't even really like what he stands for, but think that he might have the electoral power. We know that he's a wizard when it comes to elections. And they're now in survival instinct and are hoping they can keep their seats. That said, as we've seen before, Tory MPs, you'd think that survival instinct would come first, but it often seems to happen that ambition comes first. And what could happen is you could see the leadership, this new leadership election, fragmenting out across 5 or 6 people and becoming totally shambolic. And then, as you say, Turkey's voting for Christmas.
You do wonder if this is going to be a weekend then of meeting in dark, smoke-filled rooms, deciding who is actually going to throw their name into the ring. Because you know, we talk about Boris Johnson coming back. We talk about Rishi Sunak wanting the top job. we don't actually know if any of them are prepared to do it, do we, at this stage?
No, we don't. And Boris Johnson in particular, we know that while he was Prime Minister, he was having some financial difficulties. He's got quite a few children to keep maintained. And obviously, before he took the job of Prime Minister, he was a prominent speaker, he was a prominent columnist, he was making a lot more money. He had to drop all of that when he became Prime Minister. He's now earning as high as £300,000 per after-dinner speech. You might think that he'd like a rather quieter life, earning quite a lot of money for his family. As for Rishi Sunak, we know that he obviously went through the mill when his wife's tax affairs came out. He also has a lot of money to be falling back on, and he might feel as though his party has turned their backs on him and that he doesn't want to stand. That said, I think that from what I know of Conservative MPs, ambition usually wins out.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. Olivia, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Fascinating.
It really is, isn't it?
Let's see if we can get some more clarity from Sean Worth, who's a former Downing Street advisor. Sean, good to see you this morning. What are you expecting moving forward on all of this? Who do you think is going to throw their hat into the ring?
I think, well, from talking to MPs yesterday, not that many, to be honest, but in terms of the barometer of their colleagues, what I think they're thinking is the majority of them, remember, a lot of them are quite young. They've come in the 2019 intake. Many of them didn't have a kind of long Conservative background. And they want someone who will basically sustain their position in the next general election, which is only 2 years away. And at the moment, the polling suggests that the Tories are on for a complete wipeout. So the only name really in the room is Rishi Sunak, for two quick reasons, building what Olivia, your colleague, just said. The first is that he's already shown he can get a big majority of support in the Commons. But secondly, he's been tested. You know, he has gone around the country doing all these hustings against Liz Truss. And if you look beyond the membership, he got quite a lot of good polling support. What they're worried about is what you call the old guard, the Conservative MPs that are in those safe seats that don't really have to worry about elections. And I worked with a load of them. They're completely inept politically, to be honest, which is why they don't tend to be in the cabinet. And those guys, you know, as Olivia said, they'll tend to vote for ambition or for ideological reasons, and they just don't have the smarts to work out, you know, how the party should be winning this next election. They shouldn't be worrying about themselves or policy purity and all that. They should be worrying about not having a Labour government in, because for them, obviously, that takes the country backwards.
Well, Sean, talking about the polls, we were just talking about the latest People's poll results. The Conservative Party falling to the lowest level of support in British polling history at just 14%. So whoever the next Prime Minister is has this monumental challenge, don't they, to bring the party back from this. What would your advice be to the next Prime Minister?
The next Prime Minister has to basically do the reverse of what Liz Truss does. Her whole operation was completely inept. And you know, I'm not saying this in retrospect, so I'm not Nostradamus either, but I did come on your channel and I was trying to be diplomatic about looking at the cabinet and looking at her number 10 operation and said this can't work politically because there's not enough people, there's not enough experience, and there's no real judgment in the room. So the next PM needs to have a broad cabinet, a much more collegiate way of making decisions, and also the number 10 operation. This is going to be hard because you've got to get people who aren't MPs outside of politics to come in and help you. And obviously, if it looks like a sinking ship, you're not going to get quality people. But you do need real grown-ups who can make, you know, proper political judgments, especially around media and party management. And those are the two big jobs, really. But as I say, the principal thing that they should be worrying about is maybe not even winning the next election if it doesn't look sustainable. They just got to think about not having a wipeout. So can somebody who's a bit more popular and appealing across the board, like a Rishi Sunak or a Boris Johnson, rather than the kind of, you know, the Suella Bravermans, the Rees Moggs and stuff like, you know, think about somebody a bit more emollient. Can they hang on to at least 30, 40 seats and stop the Tory party, as you say, heading into oblivion?
That then plays into who's going to want the job, doesn't it? And I wonder if it plays more into the hands of someone like Boris Johnson, who's obviously been there, done that, rather than someone like Rishi Sunak, who very much wants to be Prime Minister, you're almost taking on the poison chalice, aren't you? If they'd never say it in public, but aren't they taking on the poison chalice of saying, we're going to do the best we can here, we're going to try to stabilise the country, we're going to try to win back votes, but we know we're not going to win the next election, and therefore my career in number 10 is over?
Yeah, I mean, if Boris Johnson does go for this, you could have someone who in 2019 got the highest political result for the Tory party in a generation, going from that to almost wipeout. It is such an unknown situation. But I think that all you've got are known knowns, right? So you've got people, Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, let's take them for argument's sake. There is nobody else in the Conservative Party that has proven that they've got any broad appeal beyond the membership, and none of them have proven they can win elections. Boris Johnson's already done that. He's a known, and Rishi Sunak has been tested quite roughly over a leadership campaign. So he's a known. Everyone else is not. And if the Conservative Party is completely stupid, which a lot of them are, unfortunately, they will choose someone for ideological and policy reasons, and they will get wiped out in the next election. So if I were them, I'd just try and go for someone who is a known. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They could be just a caretaker for the next 2 years going into an election loss, but at least it won't be a wipeout, and maybe they can hold on to 30, 40 seats. Who knows, they could even win. So the Tory party has now got to think about the election, not about, as Olivia was saying, their personal fortunes or the policy purity.
We're out of time, Sean, so I'm going to get told off. But can I just get you to reiterate that point? Because you've said it a couple of times. Hang on. Do you mean hanging on to an additional 30 or 40 seats, or hanging on to 30 or 40 seats in total?
Oh, no, I don't think it'd be that bad. I think losing power, losing an election, but, do you want to face a Tony Blair-style hammering where you get, completely wiped out, or can you hang on to an extra 30, 40 seats and just not, and not be such a tiny minority in the Commons? It's about survival in the current polls, but can they be turned around? That's the big question.
Okay. Sean, really good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. It's like what you were saying, it could be about mitigating loss, couldn't it?
I've been bleating on about that all week, but I think that's how it's looking. There's loads of you then get in touch and say, well, you don't assume the Labour Party is going to win the next general election. Well, you don't assume anything in this game. But it's looking almost unthinkable that they wouldn't at the moment when you look at the polling data. I know that could change, and it will change, but will it change enough? I just don't know. Well, nobody knows at this stage, do they?
Yeah, wow. Do keep your thoughts coming in. We've had so many emails today. Janine says, I would love to see Boris back. He was hounded out by the Labour Party, Conservatives who are more likely Labour elites, and the media. And Aaron says, given the state of UK politics, I'd rather vote for the Taliban. At least they're honest about what they want and actually carry out what they say they will. I don't think it's got that bad yet, have they?
I think that's a bit... I mean, I see the point you're making, but I think there are better ways of putting it, to be frank. Tom says, as I sit here with a blanket around me trying to save gas, watching the news, all I see is MPs behaving like kids in a playground. What did they expect when you furlough people to sit on Bournemouth Beach for 2 years in a war in Europe? The whole world is in a mess, but apparently it's all down to Boris and Liz. And Partida says, are you the marketing arm of Boris Johnson? No, we're not, but we are just trying to reflect, Partida, what people are saying to us. I mean, and it's not just us. I mean, look, every paper. What's this one? The Express. He's on the front of the Express.
The Mail, the Sun.
There's the Sun.
It's on the Metro as well. I mean, it's...
Yeah, it's the Metro.
And the Daily Telegraph
I mean,
as well.
It's just like Boris is everywhere because people are seeing it as the... I was the one saying to people, not the one, when people were emailing in saying, bring back Boris, saying it'll never happen. It's never, you might want it, but it's never going to happen. Because the MPs would never put him through to the final two. Well, now, maybe it's all, they say a week is a long time in politics.
Yeah.
It's that old phrase, isn't it? But by heck are we seeing it now. So maybe Boris can be back.
If we've seen anything in the last week, anything can happen. Astonishing things are happening all of the time. So do keep your thoughts coming in, GBViews at gbnews.uk. OK, let's bring you up to date with the other stories that are going on today.
Yeah, the United States says Iranian military trainers were in Crimea helping Russian forces operate Iranian-made drones to attack targets in Ukraine. That's despite Iran and Russia denying the allegations. Thursday, though, saw day one of forced power cuts in Ukraine since the war began in order for repairs to be made to damaged energy plants.
Kevin Spacey has won the civil sex abuse claim brought against him. Jurors found Star Trek actor Anthony Rapp didn't prove his claim that the House of Cards star had made sexual advances towards him when he was 14. Mr. Spacey has denied any misconduct.
A hospital's regulator has said maternity services in England are the worst they've ever been, with 2 in 5 units ranked inadequate. The Care Quality Commission says it has deep concerns about the level of care given to mothers and babies, with systemic issues within NHS leadership and culture. Its report calls maternity unit issues a national challenge.
A think tank warns household food bills have gone up by a total of £11.4 billion this year. That's £407 a month for the average family, or nearly £34 a month. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit has found combined impacts of climate and oil and gas prices have driven bill costs, showing the risk of having a food system reliant on fossil fuels. Now, Boris Johnson is reportedly travelling back from his holiday in the Bahamas, must be nice, to launch his leadership bid following Liz Truss's resignation.
Well, one potential fly in the ointment, though, is Boris's own seat. It's a marginal. He won by just 7,000 votes last time around. So 7,000 isn't that bad, but it's, you know, it's not a whopping great 20-odd thousand, is it? Well, that is Uxbridge. And let's head to Alice Porter, who's there for us this morning. Alice, good morning to you. They sort of love him or loathe him in Uxbridge, don't they? What's the sense you're getting today?
Well, I have to say, I thought my days standing in Uxbridge Town Centre were over, because I have come here so many times over the last few months asking people about Boris Johnson. I thought that was going to be a thing of the past, but clearly that is not the case, because Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak are the two that so far publicly have the most number of MPs backing them. But as you were just saying there, a week is very long, not very long in politics, so that could all change. But there's, I suppose, a couple of factors that I suppose we need to look at. One is that he will also be the only person standing who has a mandate by the people, and so that's one important thing to consider, rather than someone who's been backed by 100 Tory MPs or from the party. So that will kind of go in his favour. But on the other hand, remember, he's still under investigation for misleading Parliament over lockdown parties. But where does that leave his constituents? I've been standing here for about 20 minutes and I've had so many people coming up to me and giving me their opinion. My general sense I've had, though, over the last few months when I've been here, is there are still a lot of people who are very loyal to Boris Johnson. Now that, I think, was particularly heightened over the last few weeks with Liz Truss. I suppose maybe the phrase, the better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And I think that's something that a lot of people have said to me, yeah, he's not perfect, but we don't like Liz Truss. And that was a message I was very much getting through from people. But with all these sort of wranglings of different people who could be leader of the Conservative Party and then also leader of the United Kingdom, it's important to stress we do have a general election in about 18 months. And I suppose the real concern for the Conservatives is whoever may lead the Conservatives and the country over the next 18 months or so, it could come back to bite them in a general election. And seats like this, as you were just saying there, Stephen, he only won by just over 7,000 in the last election. And actually back in 2017, he only won by just over 5,000. Well, that was the smallest majority of any sitting Prime Minister since 1924. And with this cost of living crisis still such a big problem for so many people, and it's no surprise that Labour are very much calling for a general election before then, but they could make some serious grounds. And seats like this, which have always voted Conservative ever since they were first created, they may not be so safe for the Conservatives in the next election.
No, indeed not. Alice, thank you. Catch up with you a little bit later on throughout the day. Of course, don't go anywhere, though. We've got lots more analysis coming up. What next for the government? What next for the opposition? We'll talk to Peter Spencer after the weather.
Good morning. Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A mix of some sunny spells, but plenty of blustery showers today as the winds pick up. But those winds still bringing in mild air, so it's not cold if you're just about to step out the door. There's low pressure moving in, though, from the southwest, bringing bands of showers, some already in across Wales and southwest England. They'll continue to track northwards as we go through the rest of the day. Some heavy ones arriving in Northern Ireland before lunchtime, parts of northwest England and the Midlands too. They are tending to move through because the breeze is picking up. And notice across eastern England, a lot drier compared to yesterday, but even here later on there will be some showers. Staying fairly damp across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere across Scotland, dry and bright until these showers move in through the afternoon, and everywhere it's mild. Temperatures above average by a few degrees. In the south, again 17, 18 perhaps, with a bit of sunshine, 19 Celsius. But if you do get a bit of sunshine, don't expect it to last. More showers moving in through the evening time. They'll be heavy in places. They will still be moving through because it will be quite blustery. And notice too, certainly across England and Wales, through the early hours, the showers tend to fade. So many places here become dry as we head into the weekend. Still pretty mild as well, double digits for many this time tomorrow morning. And actually Saturday will be by and large a fine day for a good part of England and Wales. Some showers in the far northwest of England, chance of 1 or 2 showers across the southeast and later on into the southwest. There will be showers tomorrow across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Won't be quite as windy tomorrow, and it will again be mild. Look at these temperatures, 14, 15 degrees across the north, further south 17, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius, again with light winds. That really won't feel like October. Come Sunday, it stays mild, but the breeze will pick up once more. Yes, there will be some sunshine around, but again, most places are going to see some showers on Sunday too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Well, let's take you through all the twists and turns then in the political world. Who better to comment on it than Peter Spencer, who, I'm delighted to say, is here in the studio. Peter, it's lovely to see you.
You too.
You have a unique take on things, I've always found over the years. What do you make of this? Because you can't have ever seen anything like this before, surely.
No one has. I mean, the Conservative Party used to trade as a broad church and very resilient and one of the most successful parties in the Western world. It is now degenerated into a loose confederation of warring tribes, to be honest. They've lost the knack of agreeing to disagree with one another. And which is why, you know, their very, very best hope is that come Monday there'll be a short list of one, because whoever is the runner-up will say, OK, Penny Mordaunt say, OK, make me Foreign Secretary and I'll just back off. Then that way they can keep the party membership out of it, because, I mean, there is a recognition that the party membership called it wrong, and there's clear evidence from the polls of buyer's remorse. And in fact, I was staying, funnily enough, with a surgeon last night, and he said, look, trying to say sorry about this is a bit like a surgeon chopping off the wrong leg and then trying to say sorry. It's very bad.
Peter, is this fixable, or is the Conservative Party too broken now? I mean, you talked there about warring tribes. There's about 12 factions, aren't there, since Brexit? We had a new poll out this morning. The lowest level of support in British polling history for the Conservative Party, just 14%. I mean, whoever the next Prime Minister is has got a monumental challenge on their hands.
They certainly have. I mean, in sort of to sound very Panglossian and optimistic, it is within the bounds of possibility that they'll end up with a short list of one. This person, probably Rishi Sunak, this person gets elected as the leader of the party and hence the Prime Minister. It gives Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, time to put together his budget, which has got to be delivered at the end of the month. And, you know, these things don't write themselves. They do take a moment. And it's going to have to actually be sort of overseen by the number crunches in just a few days' time. Well, you know what? It's not just like 100 words or something. It's quite a complicated package.
But would there be an advantage to Sunak being in charge in that a lot of what the proposals from Hunt seem to be are actually tying in with what Sunak was originally proposing?
Totally. I mean, Hunt, remember, was a prominent backer of Sunak, and so these guys are, to use the phrase, in lockstep, and that potentially will work. I mean, the other thing to consider is that Sunak was the MP's choice in the first place. Remember that Liz Truss most certainly was not. 2/3 of them didn't even want her. There are problems with getting to the factionalism here. The problem is, of course, those who say that he betrayed Boris Johnson and we hate him for that. Well, they're just going to have to suck it up if they... Yeah?
Just very briefly, because we're out of time, really, Peter. Jacob Rees-Mogg has just tweeted, good old Twitter, he says he's backing Boris.
Yes, indeed, lovely. I mean, there's been a photograph of Boris looking lovely and suntanned, because he's just back from his Caribbean holiday in Dominican Republic. And it reminds me of Jim Callaghan coming back from that summit all those years ago in Guadeloupe, looking nice and suntanned. Crisis, what crisis?
Peter, really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. That is it from us. We're back tomorrow morning at 6.
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A mix of some sunny spells, but plenty of blustery showers today as the winds pick up. But those winds still bringing in mild air, so it's not cold if you're just about to step out the door. There's low pressure moving in, though, from the southwest, bringing bands of showers, some already in across Wales and southwest England. They'll continue to track northwards as we go through the rest of the day. Some heavy ones arriving in Northern Ireland before lunchtime, parts of northwest England and the Midlands too. They are tending to move through because the breeze is picking up. And notice across eastern England, a lot drier compared to yesterday, but even here later on there will be some showers. Staying fairly damp across the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere across Scotland, dry and bright until these showers move in through the afternoon, and everywhere it's mild. Temperatures above average by a few degrees. In the south, again 17, 18 perhaps, with a bit of sunshine, 19 Celsius. But if you do get a bit of sunshine, don't expect it to last. More showers moving in through the evening time. They'll be heavy in places. They will still be moving through because it will be quite blustery. And notice too, certainly across England and Wales through the early hours, the showers tend to fade. So many places here become dry as we head into the weekend. Still pretty mild as well, double digits for many this time tomorrow morning. And actually Saturday will be by and large a fine day for a good part of England and Wales. Some showers in the far northwest of England, chance of 1 or 2 showers across the southeast and later on into the southwest. There will be showers tomorrow across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Won't be quite as windy tomorrow, and it will again be mild. Look at these temperatures, 14, 15 degrees across the north, further south 17, 18, perhaps 19 Celsius, again with light winds. That really won't feel like October. Come Sunday, it stays mild, but the breeze will pick up once more. Yes, there will be some sunshine around, but again, most places are going to see some showers on Sunday too.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning, it's 9:33 and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, live from Downing Street, a street on which I feel I live at the moment. It feels like this is yet another momentous day in British politics, so momentous, more momentous perhaps than the last or the one before that.